Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 20th day of November 2024, and welcome to our show today. So today we start out with Liberty Essentials at 9 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, I have Kimberly Mosby on, who is a survivor, an MK Ultra survivor, and she talks about coercive tactics that are used on people and how you can kind of escape those. And then at 11 o'clock, it's Caleb Collier talking about church and state and the education programs that they have going on there, that we can actually find alternatives that are already out there to start educating our children and getting them off these indoctrination camps. So I'm going to go right into Liberty Essentials with Ralph, Karen, and Bill. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did you see where they're talking about abolishing the National Education Association, the NEA?
I did, and I would actually look forward to that.
I would too.
They're looking to abolish a lot of things.
Yeah, all of us homeschoolers have been ready for this for like 30, 40 years now. Going on for me. Oh, that's right. You guys aren't as old as I am.
Well,
yeah, that's been a plague on the system for quite some time, that and the entire Department of Education and all the state interfaces that go with it.
Yep, you look at the nationalization of the Department of Education stuff, and the academic performance metrics of basically everything have pretty much just steadily gone downhill since that was introduced.
Well, I think watching the things that like Vicki Davis talks about when she's on here, and it's just totally fascinating to watch how the treaties, the international treaties, as well as the technocratic side of it, the communication lines, so that they can pretty much own everything. If you own all of the communication lines, you're in control, because you're in control of the narrative, you're in control of moving people around, you're in control of the surveillance, of their bank accounts, of everything about a person. Their entire identity is captured on these electronic means. And I mean, look what it's done with our elections. I'm still not done with griping about this election, because though my guy got in, the rightful president of the United States, who I will support, because not only did he do a good job, but on top, and nobody's perfect, okay, but he did a good job being handed a chaotic, disastrous state of the United States. But his rights were violated as an American, and I still feel very strongly about standing together when somebody's rights are violated. But I guess that's what it is. So we're going to talk about moving forward here in the executive orders. You wanted to talk about that. I was obsessed with President Trump's executive orders. Absolutely. And I do think, though, going back to the elections, that we really have to have a full-on investigation, because I don't know why they let him win, why he won, because they slaughtered us in the down ballot candidates, the local elections.
When you say they, which they are you meaning?
The bad guys.
I don't think the bad guys are in control. That's why I say that.
Well, I don't either. But when you look at how many rigged elections there were in the down ballot candidates, that, there's no way, with the popularity that they had, that the numbers would have come out the way that they did. And why is it that President Trump won, Mike Rogers didn't, and he conceded right away, just like Tudor Dixon did?
And that's the way we see it all the time, though. In every election, you see the top of the ticket guys, right? And that's where the majority of Americans focuses. And then you look down ballot and you see a lot of other things happening that don't seem to match the same criteria and the same statistics that happen at the top of the ballot. This is nothing new. We see it in local elections all the way down to like school board, for Pete's sake. And even though those are supposedly nonpartisan, we all know that the people are still promoted through party for the most part. And the mindset of the people is still locked onto that simple fact. But the executive order thing, I want to go back a couple of years, because we can't forget this as Americans, the things that happened in 20 and 21, 22. And I don't know about all the states. I don't have the time nor the patience to sit there and look through all 50 states to see what was happening. But for the most part, they were all walking lockstep together and whatever they were ordered down. And the majority of things that were done were all done via executive orders, right? In the state of Michigan, we had our governor queen over here, self-proclaimed, that she ended up issuing hundreds of executive orders in a matter of just 2.5 years. And I don't know how many Americans actually take the time to read their constitutions, but executive orders are only listed one spot in the Michigan Constitution. There are some states who don't list them at all. And in Michigan, if you go to the section regarding the governor's powers, you will find very clearly in the very first couple of subsections the description and the authority and the purpose and the lawful use of any executive orders coming from a state governor. And those are specifically directed at giving directives to the internal departments that are set up under the executive branch, right? Those 20 principal departments that we're supposed to have, which are now extended beyond any reasonable view of what they were supposed to be, right? So we had all these executive orders come down, everything from, you can't gather with more than 10 people to, you can't operate a business if there's people coming in, especially those of restaurants and such, to, I don't know, you name it. Everything happened. And it happened rapidly and it happened quickly. And for the majority, all the other branches of government went along with it. And all of those executive orders, almost all of them were completely illegal and unconstitutional. And you can see the results of that by what the Michigan Supreme Court had shot down several times. Not only did they go through and disseminate the executive orders, but they shot down even some of the laws, those pieces of pretended legislation, like the Emergency Use Act and such here in Michigan. They even shot those down, saying that those were unconstitutional as well. So you have to ask the question, where did they perceive this authority from to write executive orders that direct the people and not just their departments, right? People and businesses. Can anybody answer me that? Where or who gave them such authority to do that? I think everybody can say that they don't, right? The closest we can get are certain laws, like in 1945 and such, that were being used that were mainly for the times in the riots, 1945, and then there was one from 1970 something, I forget what that one was, being used in times of riot and tumult, where the legislature granted the authority to the governor to be able to direct the people and to restrict the people to prevent any more type of tumult or chaos in the streets, right? And some people say, well, yeah, that's a good thing because that has to be stopped. And for the most part, I agree with you, except who granted the legislature the authority to give that authority to the governor? Anybody got an answer for me? I had spoken...
The same pink unicorn that was behind the executive orders, right? We have flying pink unicorns out there, and they're like grabbing hold of that and say, yeah, well, he granted us the wish, it was on my bucket list. How's that?
Yeah, that's pretty close. That's pretty close. Now, during that time, I had spoken with numerous state representatives because I wanted to understand what in the world that they were thinking, and I wanted to instruct them a little bit. So a couple of the representatives in my local area at the time, one being our own, I'm losing his name here, but one being our own supposable Republican, big liberty promoter, second amendment defender and such. I can't think of his name. He just moved into the Senate. couple years ago. Oh well. Anyway, there were a couple of them.
Molinar or
No, he was a representative. I'll think of it eventually. Mark something.
yeah,
But-
I like John Molinar, by the way. So
Yeah, well, John Molinar, he asks a lot of questions that don't need to be asked, right? Thus seemingly giving authority or asking the people whether or not the government has the authority to do such things. And he should know better in a lot of those instances, right? Like he was one that sent me an email. It's like, hey, should the government be able to ban gas stoves? Right? Or would you support the government in banning gas stoves when that was a big thing? I was like, who are you to ask such a question? That is not within your scope of authority. And why are we paying you to even spend the time to write an email and send something like that out? Little things like that. It's just completely unnecessary and shows the lack of understanding of the constitutional authority that they have. So as I was talking to these representatives, I would ask them the questions and such. Where did this law come from? By what authority are they acting under it, right? And hands down, without fail, every single one of them gave me some line similar to this, that the legislature can write laws on anything, including, and I asked them even about the Michigan State Police, right? Because they are an entity that has no authority, not in the Constitution. They are set up by statutory limitations that they exceed on a day-by-day basis. But the people have never granted that authority. And the representative said that the legislature can grant any authority like that to any department they want to set up, and even give them the authority of deadly force. Right? Well, if you take that to the extreme, what's to prevent a legislature from going after anybody simply by the stroke of a pen? There's no end to it. These people do not understand the law. They do not understand the process by which we have it. They don't understand the foundation by which it exists. And they certainly don't understand the authority that's been granted to them and the thou shalt nots that the people have put into the Constitution, right? In Michigan, we have a whole first page plus a little of thou shalt nots against the people. In our U.S. Constitution, the states put up the Bill of Rights. First and foremost, because they needed more declaratory measures to restrain the government, right, from usurpation. This is, kind of preaching to the choir here, but this is the foundation by which everything else revolves. So they claim this authority that has never been granted to them, and then they assume that they have the authority to grant another department authority, namely that of the executive branch, to write supposable executive orders that have the force of law against the people. Now, in our Michigan Constitution, the executive branch has that authority, and some directives may have the force of law. However, every single executive order that can be swiped with a pen from the governor's chair in the state of Michigan can only be directed at their departments. They can never be directed at the people nor any other branch, and cannot be used as any legislative means to either create or interpret law in such a manner that it's not put in place, right? So for 2.5+ years during the whole pandemic, we saw that being done over and over and over in every state of this union in one means or another. And very few people were calling that for what it was. And that was simply a traitorous act by a tyrant sitting in a chair. Right? It was no more and it was no less than that. And the people's representatives went along with it because they were foolish enough to, not having read their Constitution before they swore an oath, to understand what those powers actually were. Right? No
or
branch
maybe
of
they were just taking orders. Like my opinion on this is I really do think that the whole system is dependent on what each other can cover for in this entire system. There's so many people that are threatened and coerced and such. I talked to one this weekend, and he's gotten out of it. and was a talk about the relief of getting out of this corrupt system. I mean, totally relieved to never have anything to do with it again. So they move as a herd. They're being directed by someone, and it appears to me that they're not always free agents to do what they want, because they're under threat and coercion too. So we need to go to the head of the snake and chop that freaking head of the snake off.
So I can think of one exception to that that is constitutionally allowable, where the governor is, or I should say more specifically the executive branch, but more specifically the governor is directly able to direct the people, and that is if the militia is mustered. And so if we want to say that she has the authority to do this stuff, does that mean that we need to respond and say, are we formally mustered to start repelling insurrection, rebellion, and invasion?
You're jumping ahead of me, Ralph. But yeah, you are correct in that regard. You are absolutely correct that the governor can call forth the militia to do those three things, and should have.
This is so funny. It's like every time the word militia comes up, Bill just like, voila, the angels start singing. You light right up, right?
Well, there's a reason for that, and I'm going to get to that, because that is the most demonized part in any constitution in this union. That term, that word, that organization is the most demonized in the union, and there's a reason why they do that. And that's the reason why I say that needs to be established, and it needs to start at the local level to get organized. Whether or not it gets called up by the governor's chair, I don't care, because they still have that duty to do so, right? So yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, you're correct. That's the only time where it can direct the people. But that being for a specific use. So let's see, where did I leave off here? So we saw all of this being done, and the legislator bowed down to it. And Donna, you pointed to something there, that they are taking orders, right?
They are.
If you look at how that works, the government as it's set up is not designed this way. However, the people, through ignorance, including their representatives, judges, and entire executive branch and department heads, and everybody else that claims the title of any employment within the U.S., by the way, who has to take the same oath and don't, all of those have this faint understanding of government and the Constitution, but they all claim allegiance to this hierarchy that's been set up and is allowed to continue. So when you talk about taking orders, you're absolutely right. They're taking them from the top down.
You bet they are.
Now, if you look at how our government is framed, the people are the ones that established it. The people are the ones who set it in motion. The people are the ones who gave it its boundaries and restrictions, and the people are the ones who gave it its duties. So I would love for any representative to tell me why they take orders from the top down, because they are not bound by the judges, and they are not bound by the governor either. They are bound solely to the Constitution and to the people that put them there, right? And a lot of people will disagree, saying, well, if the judges interpret the law a certain way, then that's the way it has to be. And once again, you take it to the extreme. What's to prevent them from interpreting anything the way they want it to be said? Right? There's no boundary. And if there's no boundary, then laws mean nothing. Okay. There has to be some established standard. Exactly. Established standard that is set in motion. And furthermore, when you get into the judicial system, who gave them the authority to interpret law? In that sense, they have no authority. Now, they are to discover and apply law, but they have no authority to interpret. And furthermore, if laws were made correctly in the scope of what they are to entail, not these 10 to 100 page bills that continue to be passed in Congress, but if they were to be set in their scope of authority, clearly defining what it is that the title says they are, there would be no need to interpret them. But they continually make them more vague and vague and vague, so that they can be manipulated to fit whatever narrative or whatever agenda they want to push and enforce at the time being. Point in case, you look at some of the laws on the books today that are legitimate, and you'll find out they're not being enforced. Why? Because nobody wants to, because they have deemed those laws as some infringement upon the people, right? Look at the case with the earlier laws against the murder of the innocent here in Michigan, right? That was banned in the state of Michigan. We don't care. I say we, but I don't care what the Supreme Court interpreted in 1973. I don't care, because they didn't have the authority. That was banned in the state of Michigan, and they illegally have killed millions within this state, right? And then once that gets overturned, they decide, well, now we have to do something about it. So they decide to throw in this constitutional amendment. Once again, that is not constitutional, nor can it exist by law, because Blackstone said that all laws which are not co-equal with the word of God and common law are null and void. There can be no law that is outside of the moral and written laws that establish this nation. Plain and simple as that. So if they don't have the authority to do it, and the laws condemn it, and the judges try to reinterpret it, why do the people go along with it every time? For the most part, people believe in this thing called case law, right? It doesn't exist. There's no constitutional basis for it, because judges cannot create law, no more than the governor can create law via executive order. But if you look and you see how this works, they've been playing this system for so long that people tend to buy into this hierarchy that somehow the government is God. I mean, for practical purposes, that's what they're saying when they say that they have to obey these certain things, including executive orders. They're claiming that government is God and can write law. And there has been no such case in America. So one of the things that I did in my household, and we do this periodically, but for whatever reason, the topic came up. And I asked just the simple questions to my children as to, where does government exist from? What creates the government? Why is it here? Right? And they're a little skittish, so they don't want to give me a wrong answer most of the time, because then we get into long discussions about it. But the premise behind all of that is that the Constitution created the government. Without the Constitution, there is no government in this union, in any of the states, right? That's the sole purpose. That's foundation, bare roots, right? And then we went into the Bill of Rights and understanding. My kids understand that if they do not know what those hundreds of thousands of men in the early days of America fought, bled, and died for, if they don't know what they gave us, then they have no ability to protect it, right? They trample on the blood that was once paid to give them their freedoms. And my kids are just now starting to understand this. My kids are still fairly young, but they're just starting to understand and comprehend this principle, and are even asking me, if they can get involved and do some of the things I do. And Don, I oftentimes take my kids to just about everywhere I go.
And they're just darling. You have great kids.
Even across this nation, because I see the need for them to understand what it is that we had to understand later on in life, kind of forced into this position, right? None of us ever asked to be here, but here we are. So we're going to make the most of it while we can. So if nobody has the authority to write laws except the legislature, and the judges don't have the authority to misinterpret the laws, and the governor doesn't have authority to write executive orders being made law, right? Except for certain cases. If you read, I think it's Article 5, Section 2, somewhere in there, regarding that point, might be the first part of Article 5 in the state of Michigan. Then let's take this up a notch, right? If it doesn't exist in the states, let's see if it exists in the union. One of the things that has just been brought up this week, and I'm kind of excited to see this. We talked briefly about eliminating a lot of these federal departments, and I'm glad we're starting to talk that way instead of just revamping or revising what they do. I'm all for the elimination of them, because they have no authority to exist once again. right?
NEA, come on, out of here. That's what they're proposing this week, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. I'm so excited about some of these changes because that's the direction that's needed to go.
Yep. And that simply can be done from the executive branch of government. Because if we read in our Constitution, our U.S. Constitution, the President of the United States is tasked with making sure that the laws are faithfully executed, right? The premise of the law, the supreme law that the people set in place, being the Constitution. Therefore, every administration in my lifetime and prior that has dealt with these unconstitutional and corrupt agencies from their start, every administration had the authority, the right, and the duty to abolish it.
Yep.
Right? Every single one, because that is the president's job to make sure that the laws are faithfully executed. And when they go outside of that, it is his job to shut them down. Now, one of the things that I had seen this past week, and now you'll probably have a link for this, is that President Trump has already called for the use of the military in a mass deportation of illegal aliens in the Union. Right?
Tom Holman put in the border czar. I know Tom, and I've met Tom, and you know what? You could not have had a better choice. It is not possible for them to have that position with anybody that's a finer fit for that job.
So here's a couple of things that I have to look at when I hear something like that, because we just talked about executive orders. But I want to push that to the second point.
I know where you're going to go with this, but it's like, I know where you're going to go with this, but I understand also that this is the way we're dealing with it.
Here's one thing I will say, that if President Trump is true about what he says, right, and that there will be a mass deportation of illegals, I'm all for it. 100%. I will stand by that. Okay. Because that is lawful and that needs to be done. Right now, the other part of that, there's actually three parts. Back up a little bit, and you find that the use of the military to deport illegals. All right. This is a little sketchy for me, because I do not see where the military is to be used for that purpose. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm not going to stand by it if it's done, but I don't see where the military is to be used for that purpose, but rather the military set up every couple of years through our apportionment. The military set up for the defense of the country, namely against declared wars, right? If Congress declares a war, which we know they haven't since, once again, long before the time I was even born. Anybody on this show, before anybody here was born. We've been in numerous, countless wars and what they want to call conflicts. They're all wars, unconstitutional at best, right? A lot of them.
Contractor and banker wars is what they are.
Yep. So the use of the military to deport illegals, I'm not so sure about that. What I read in the Constitution, right? And Ralph, you brought this up. We're going to go there. What I read in the Constitution is that the president is to make sure that the laws are faithfully executed in this union. However, who is the responsible party for executing the laws? It is the people, the right of the militia of the several states, right? And you can read about that in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 and 16, where Congress should have this whole time been arming, disciplining, and regulating the militia so that they may suppress insurrection, repel invasion. Hold on, it's duties of militia now. I'm getting way ahead of myself in my brain here. But that is their job, the militia, the people's job, right? So when I say I'm sketchy on the use of military, right, our founding fathers clearly laid out that this union should not have a standing military because they fought the world's largest standing military to give us what we got. And I don't want that to ever become a problem again. I don't want a standing military in this union. It will become a threat to the people. And I don't care where it goes. If it remains, it will be the threat to the people. And we saw that here in Grand Rapids, Donna, if you remember right, when they brought in the National Guard to prevent people from being out past 8 o'clock in the city limits of Grand Rapids. Where was that authority? It was granted to the National Guard, or as Michigan statute claims, the organized militia, but then later referred to as the Michigan military, right? There's a conflict in laws here, and depending on how you want to look at it, but nonetheless, we used a standing army in the state to suppress the people's right to assemble. I understand that there were people not peaceably assembling. I get that point. But the majority of the people were still peaceably assembling and making a point to their government, right? Sort of in a certain way, petitioning for redress of grievances. However, I will admit I was one there in the militia at the time that were willing to put a stop to it, and we were told to shut down by the chief of police in Grand Rapids, right?
Who
Nonetheless,
took a knee to the domestic terrorists on the streets of Grand Rapids, you know, BLM and Pantifa, because a bunch of I don't know what a bunch of.
Yeah, it's really multifaceted when you look at it.
I'm going to be nice and call them a bunch of deranged squirrels out there running around, right?
Yep. It's multifaceted when you look at it, but you have to go through and just point at the law, at what can be and what can't be, right? You're going to say something there, Ralph, before I go on?
Oh, I was just, I mean, this is a couple points back, but one of the, why don't you go ahead and continue, and we'll circle back to this.
Oh no,
Okay.
he's turned into Jen Psaki.
Yeah, has to do with the separation of powers.
Ah, gotcha. All right. So yes, I'm a little sketchy on the use of military for those reasons. Okay. But I also understand it can be done that way, but it shouldn't have to be done that way. Okay. I'm going to leave that at that. Now let's go back to the first point in this whole entire report, that the use of executive orders being used for this purpose. Okay. Nowhere in our U.S. Constitution does the president allow for executive orders. Okay. That's kind of this man-made mindset of this is how things can be directed to the various people that need to have it directed to. Okay. So executive orders in that sense, I'm okay with. Anything outside of that, I'm against. Okay. In this case, we have an executive order that is calling for the lawful removal of illegal immigrants. In its entire premise, absolutely 100% go for it. Right. The only thing that I would say should have been done different, or should be done different, right? There's still time because it hasn't been done yet, but that should be done different. And people are going to say, well, Bill, why don't you run for president of the United States? Well, first off, no one's asked me. Second off, I don't have an inclination to be there. And third off, we really don't need another assassination in the Union. Okay. So the thing that needs to change there is, instead of using a unconstitutional standing military, the militia, Ralph, should be mustered across the Union, because they know what is going on in their own states. Okay. They should be organized and should be armed and should be disciplined and regulated according to law, so that they can handle these issues. Now, when we talk about illegal immigrants and borders and such, we need to realize that every state in this union is a border state, right? About the time the Wright brothers flew there in North Carolina, that kind of changed the whole face of what potentially a border could be, because it is only an entry point into a country. That's a border. So we have these numerous international airports that can fly from countries to countries, and every state now, to my knowledge, every state has an international airport. I may be wrong, but everyone that does has now become a border state to any other country in the world.
Well,
okay?
we have another thing is the interior ports. the interior ports that they've designated as interior ports. So you can be in the middle of Oklahoma and there's an interior port on a road that is connected, and they consider them a port.
So I have a question. Considering
Yep.
that constitutionally the Navy is really the only branch that's supposed to be allowed, and they're there to protect the borders of the United States and not be a standing army within it, does that mean that technically the Navy should really be setting up patrols in around all of the international airports?
Only if they bring back the F-14s, which is my favorite aircraft of all times, and a Black Hawk.
The international airports just need a moat.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So here's why I've said before that our Constitution is becoming inadequate because the people have not kept up with it, right? There's a reason why we were given the ability to lay out constitutional amendments to be able to change the Constitution to fit as we progress as humanity, right? That was one of the purposes. Because the Navy is supposed to be going around the country, right, and securing all of the lands around the country that touch water, they can do that, but it really doesn't solve the problem, right? Because we have all of the new threats in aircraft, we have new threats in missiles, we have new threats in electronic communications, and all of that. So our Constitution, the people have failed to adjust that as necessary, right? Now, in my opinion, I am of the mindset that we could easily go back to the Articles of Confederation and allow the states to handle all of the unaddressed issues that tried to be addressed within our Constitution, right? The Constitution was set up certainly to address certain things and to establish powers within a central federal government, very limited and few, that would secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, as written by the founders, right? However, that beast has become so large that I don't see much of a way out of it. I'm looking forward to this nullification of all these different departments and the elimination of them, but I'm not sure that we can ever address the entire beast without doing away with it and setting up new guards for liberty, right? And we'll do a whole show on that at some point, because I've been enlightened to a few other thoughts of our founders on that matter. But so the Navy can't adequately set up within each airport, within each port of entry, okay? And the armed forces in that manner really shouldn't be doing that, because once again, then you have a standing army that is centralized in a federal government within each state that may or may not have any unlimited authority by the same executive orders that directed it to be there, right? So, like I said, it's a sketchy topic. However, the people, at least the people that love country and love God and want to see the country thrive, survive, and be safe for themselves and their posterity, and retain these liberties that were granted to us by God and secured through the Constitution, the people are their only safeguard to protecting liberty, as Thomas Jefferson said, right? Thus he said, let them be armed, okay? There is no reason why we shouldn't be organized enough to be able to handle these issues state to state. And there is no reason why a president couldn't write an executive order directing the appropriate officers within the militias, which should be established by who? Our governor, right? They're supposed to set up officers, which they don't, only in their standing army known as the National Guard now. But there's no point why a president couldn't direct the officers and direct the governors, say, you have a problem, you need to make sure this is faithfully executed, right? That would be a proper use of not only an executive order, of not only the militias, of not only making sure the laws are faithfully executed, but if it's refused, what happens? This is the unique part. If it's refused, then the federal government should go back and claim an impeachment against the state elect as well, and direct all of their legislatures to do the same, right? And I believe that if the people honestly understood the threats at hand, it wouldn't be an issue to accomplish that. The problem is the people don't understand all of the threats that we're facing at the levels we're facing them, and instead are so focused on just a federal corruption and a federal invasion that we miss out on all these things that are happening in our states, right? So yes, it's a good thing that this announcement came from President Trump. I hope it succeeds, and I will do whatever necessary to help that along, right? Hey, you know, Michigan has one of the largest militias in the union, guys. Montana might have us beat, but they're really quiet about it over there. So Militigan is one of the largest.
I like that. That's good.
Right?
So I would like to argue that technically that whatever state is the most populous technically has the largest militia, whether they want to admit it or not, although it may not be properly organized.
Or armed, like California or New York.
Or disciplined.
Yeah, you're correct. When militia referred to just as the people, as we call it, and as it should be, you're correct. The heaviest populated areas have the largest militias, whether they acknowledge it or not. And that is one of the things as well. When we go and we fight these battles and we fight wars, and I know there were talks about a draft, and I'm glad to see that didn't happen, and I hope it doesn't happen still, because that's also unconstitutional. But when we talk about fighting these wars and having a standing military do that work, which in some cases needs to be done if it's a righteous war, right? But to enlist people, especially by draft, should never happen. We just said, just quoted Thomas Jefferson, where the people are their only safeguards to liberty. The reason why the militia is established as that safeguard is because if the people are willing to fight for their liberty, they will be successful, right? Because we will take any drastic measure necessary as individuals to make sure that our children are safe. And the reason why that should be, and why it is a voluntary service, mind you, at least for the most part, some states had made it mandatory, but for the most part, it's a voluntary service, because if you're willing to stand up and volunteer to give everything you have, including your last life's drop of blood, do you think that that person's going to defect or go AWOL? I mean, really, the fact that we have a military that now forces a standing army to do certain things, and a lot of them understand that it's unconstitutional and unlawful as I speak to them, especially regarding the whole convid regulations within the military, right? That's still going on, by the way. There are still hundreds fighting that battle on that front. I know of them personally. But the fact that we think that we can direct a standing army to do what their conscience says is wrong, that allows for a defection. That's not the right word I want to use, but that allows for factions within the military, and it causes division and separation. So they're not unified for a purpose. That's why I say that the volunteer aspect of the militia is one of the most beautiful things we have in this union, because it is honestly the safeguard that we have in place that our founders had given us and set up. I talked about a couple of the other states making it mandatory, right? There are some states that not too long ago on your birth certificate that actually had your militia assigned duty and station. Right? A lot of people don't know that. I think one of them was Georgia, and it wasn't but a couple decades ago. That was listed right there on your birth certificate when you were born. Hey, you're part of this militia. When you get to age and you can actually defend your fellow man, here's where you station. Here's the people you go talk to. Right? I mean, how cool is that? I would love that. But we've lost that aspect of it. So, Ralph, I want to get back to something that you were talking about. You had mentioned the separation of powers. I want to see where you go with that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I see that people claim the executive orders are valid for is how many things that the legislature has outsourced their duties to different either departments or to, in some cases, private 501c3s or private companies, like the National Fire Code, where they basically just legislated that, well, the law for fire code is whatever the NFPA puts in their rules, or the FRA, where they've set up a department that they've decided is under executive branch control, that is and is valid to take executive orders from, but they make their own rules which carry the force of law, despite not having to have those rules pass anything in the legislature.
Did that with building codes too. All building codes are the same way, and same thing with the rail industry.
Yep,
and everything.
And a lot of that, they allow them to make rules independently of the legislature, and put some of that authority not for just the enforcement and execution of the laws in the executive branch, but they also assign the duties of making rules that carry the force of law to just the executive branch without congressional authority. And so some of the claims that I see of, the executive orders should validly apply to that because it's under executive branch control, the entire premise should be struck down by the separation of powers.
That is exactly correct. All of these departments that have been created by statutory law don't exist, right? If they're not under control of the legislature in making law, then they cannot exist by the Constitution. And it's explicitly clear that the individual branches of government cannot exercise authority belonging to another unless it's clearly defined in the Constitution, right? That's one of the statements in our Michigan Constitution. There is one section that is clearly defined where the governor has the authority of executive orders and can have the force of law, right? But when you read that, you understand that it's not a force of law against the people. It cannot be, only within the departments. And when the legislatures or Congress set up these departments, you're right. They originally set them up and give them their guidelines. These are what you do. These are what you don't do. But then the executive branch kind of absolves them. They're set up, and I understand the intent behind them, right? They're set up for a purpose, but they've left off the authority of them, right? And as such, this is a big thing when I was running guns. That's not what I meant to say. When I was a firearm dealer, right? I saw a problem in my community, so I just did it. I went out and I set up a firearm store, went through all the unconstitutional regulation because I saw that the people in my area needed to be armed, and well, they kind of lacked in some aspects of it. So I did that. I did that for the people, and then regulations had changed, and the legislature decided that, it's okay to do these other things and force businesses to violate the people's rights. And when you do that, and I'm a business, and you want to force me to violate the people's rights, then I said, nope, I'm all done. And so I wrapped it up and said goodbye.
We had that all with the COVID nonsense too, where employers were, we were subject to that too, where we were being threatened by the UP to shut down the rail facility if we didn't have a fully vaccinated facility. And then in Grand Rapids too, with real estate and such. And I literally went up to a couple of cops and said, go ahead and arrest me. I put my hand out. I said, because I will not comply. So I said, if we're going to do this, why don't we just do this right now? Because this is not happening. And, how many businesses told them to shove it and just, certainly the big box stores didn't. They took the American flags off of the able to be purchased list and all that other sort of nonsense. But they let those things that were degrading to people or the nation continue to operate as normal. But they shut the churches down. They shut down anything that was more family oriented. And when you watch a shutdown for the government, they always go after those things that are honestly things that people do to maintain stability in a bad situation. They will go after those things, and it's definitely kind of a manipulative mind control type technique.
Well, and I want to correct something you said there, because they, being the officials in government, right? When you say that they shut down all these things, like the churches and the stores and the whatever else have you, the schools.
Under threat and coercion, they did.
Under threat and coercion,
yes.
Right?
Yep.
The problem was the people complied, just as you said. You were one of those that did not. I was one of those that did not. I continued to work. In fact, I cut back to 4 days a week, right? And that's not out of fear, but I cut back to 4 days a week so that I had an extra day to fight the battles that came up, right? And I did that for, a year and a half or so, because it was necessary to do, but it's also necessary to provide for my family. The problem that lied there is that the people that bowed down to the government, and that's really all it was, that complied to it, they feared the government more than they feared the one who gave them their liberty, right? The fear of man will cause a snare, the Bible says, and that we are not to fear God, or that we are not to fear man that can, just kill us and throw us in the grave, right? What's the worst that can happen? Hey, you kill me and throw me in the grave. Cool. Blessings to me. But we're to fear God rather, because after he kills the body, he's able to cast soul into hell, right? And that was the part that was left off. And as a majority, right? I saw a lot of churches shut down, and that was, man, I think I fought that straight for months, over and over and over, even to the point where I told our assembly up in Nuevo, when they were asking, well, what should we do? And I was like, why are you asking me what we should do? Are you not elders? Do you not know the scriptures? Do you not understand that we have this authority and the government has no control over us? I didn't understand that, right? Why would you come to me and ask me that question? But I told them, I was like, whatever path you take, because I have no rights in that church because of membership complications that they have set up, man-made membership. When you apply for an application to be part of an organization, I have some issues with that. But they came to me and asked me, and I said, listen, it doesn't matter what path you take. Here's what we ought to do, right? And that's to stay open, to invite the sick. Good grief, give housing for those that need it, help out our local businesses, comfort them, prod them, encourage them on to stay open, and put a stop to this absolute nonsense. And I told them, if you ever close these doors for this purpose, thinking that the government has authority, you'll never see my face here again. I did that with almost every business that I would normally attend. There are probably 20 some businesses on my list here in Grand Rapids that I've said the same thing to during that time. And I said, if you do this, you'll not see my face around here again, because I'm not supporting tyranny, right? And so that they're still on that list, and I still don't support those businesses because of that issue.
There's a bunch of them I still don't shop at because of what they did during COVID.
Yeah, that is the people's security, right? We could have put an end to this if everybody would have understood the foundation and the premise by which it was being done, and that it was completely unlawful from the start, right? If we have a huge infectious disease or anything else, I don't care what it is, if it becomes a threat to the American people, by all means, people rise up, deal with the issue, get it over with, whatever means that you deem is going to be safe for yourself and for your posterity, and without violating any of the rights, laws, or liberties of any other person, then we could have handled it, and it would have been done and over with, and we wouldn't have had that governor still seated there, or the lieutenant governor, or the attorney general, right? Or half of the legislature, if
or
not
more
99%.
Because they were not saying anything. You know, when we go back, when they shut this state down, the legislature was saying nothing. It was silent as the grave. And the, you know, any of our law enforcement agencies, there was only a couple of sheriffs, Darleaf, one of them, that actually stood up for the people. The whole state just caved. I'm going to say right now that I can honestly say I believe this was a really good process to go through, because we had been so conditioned to follow orders that we almost had to come face to face with this in order to turn the nation around. It wasn't going to come by talking. People had to see it and see how badly misled we were, and what really needed to change. And a lot of times you can't make those decisions unless you actually live it and realize this is something worth fighting, and no backing down, wavering. We cannot have this ever happen again. And if they try, they're going to have a big freaking problem this time, because there's so many more of us this time that would absolutely, they have created an uncontrollable entity out of the American people by educating us on exactly what tyranny looks like. And I don't know about you, but everybody I know right now is, oh, hell no, this ain't happening again.
Well, and something that I've seen in the robotics community that I think also applies to both this as well as what we were talking about with the militia earlier is one of the big lessons that they learned in robotics back in, I'd say, probably the late 90s, is they took a look at inspiration from biology, in that prior to that, they were trying to do robotics using one centralized computer. And the problem is that you couldn't really do it well.
Mainframes, the big mainframes.
Yeah. Or even just, I mean, by that point, they had largely miniaturized down to even just a PC trying to control an entire robot. And the problem is that trying to have one thing doing all of the tasks of coordinating all of the end effectors and everything. This was not for industrial robots, but like research robotics into doing like artificial intelligence, that sort of thing. It didn't work well. And what they did is they started looking to biology and saying, you know, the way that biology works, pretty much every organism out there has subsystems within it to be able to do reflexive actions closer to where things are sensed so that they can react quicker. So you have reflexes in your knees and that sort of thing. You touch something hot, you're going to pull your hand away pretty darn quick, right? And when they figured that out, that if we start distributing this authority for how to control this machine into smaller subsystems and having one centralized command and control that can take control if needed over these subsystems, that it works so much better. You get much better reaction times out of your sensing and your sensing and actuators, and it's a lot more durable to damage to things, as well as severing of communication lines basically between the individual components. It's a lot more durable having the primary control much closer to the things that it's trying to control rather than way far away in a centralized location.
And that goes back to like the entire government. Decentralization of power is what is more effective as a decentralized system. And I think that's where you're going with this. Am I correct?
Yeah, it ends up being, and you see this in biology, you see it in robotics, and it's something that we had to discover again, is that the centralization was actually quite harmful, and distributing that authority, the primary authority, to actually being closer to smaller individualized modules ended up being considerably better.
Well, look at it from a biblical perspective, the Tower of Babel, and centralizing and making everything like one great big, controllable ball instead of decentralizing everything. so that one evil entity can't take over, because that's exactly what it's going to do. If you have so much centralization, you've got no checks and balances, because they'll take things over just like they've done in our government. Same thing with the media. That is and I'm going to segue into this, guys. The media for doing decentralization. And by the way, we added another channel on Odyssey recently, so we're loading that up with content right now. And I'm going to be very quickly moving into TikTok and going into another channel there, because right now we've got like 9 different channels that we're going out by. And people ask me all the time, well, how many followers do you have? And I'm like, I don't even want to look at that. I want to be in so many different areas that I'm not a big enough target. And that's why we got on tour. All of the decentralization and having those backup systems that keep us going in the right direction.
Smaller individual components built up into something bigger.
Yes. So it helps with the failure. It makes things a little more fail safe. So next guest is on backstage, Kimberly Mosby. And so how do we want to end this, guys? This segment, last 30 seconds, or what do we want to do here? Go ahead.
I think I pretty much had my 30 seconds. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, you touched on that. And if you look at Exodus 18 and how God had established government for his people, mind you, and then throughout Leviticus where he had judges set up, rulers and judges over 1,000 and over 100 and over 10, right? It brought it down to the local communities, right? And it's the same setup that we had from our founders, is that we have, oversee government, executive, legislative, judicial, and then you drop that down. You have various different county governments, and then various different township governments, and then even municipalities within that. That was the same idea. I mean, it's all premised on common law. Everything that we see is premised on common law, and that should remain as long as the people are willing to secure it and to take care of it. As Benjamin Franklin said, you have a republic if you can keep it, right? It's the people's job. Hey, we're the militia. I'm not going to demonize the word. I love it. So it's about time that we stand up and actually put that in its rightful place and call for the executive powers that be to use it for its purpose so we can get things done, right? Hopefully, we'll see. I'd love to see it in my lifetime. If not, you can guarantee my kids are going to be trained up the same way. And there's more of them than there is of me.
The only thing in the Constitution that uses the words "is necessary," it is the militia, a well-regulated militia. And they keep wanting to do, you know what they want to do? They want us to see us grab your torches and pitchforks and take to the streets, crazy crap like that. And I mean, that's they've turned it into a cartoonesque misrepresentation. That's not what it's all about. It's not just grab your torches and pitchforks. It's actually serving your community in a variety of ways. And, maybe providing food, maybe providing help, all that sort of thing. And so we need to make sure that we take control of this little definition that they have completely torn down and sent off somewhere out in the netherworlds here, and bring it back to what it's supposed to be, So yep. Thanks a lot, guys. And that is it for Liberty Essentials for today. But guess what? We're going to be back next Wednesday, because we're never leaving this, because we are unwavering patriots, just absolutely going to keep just beating this dead horse, which is it's a live horse. We're going to keep beating this issue out there, the drums, to get this out there for people to understand what is supposed to be happening. And I love you guys. You guys are amazing. So we will be right back. I'm going to go to a quick brief 30-second break, and I'll be bringing on Kimberly Mosby. Good morning and welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 20th day of November 2024. Welcome to our show. My next guest is Kimberly Mosby. Mosby, born in Helena, Montana, is a leader, author, and advocate who has overcome immense personal systemic challenges, a targeted individual who endured coercive control. Kimberly fought her way through adversity and emerged stronger, using her experiences to speak up for others facing similar situations. I'm going to put a title to this because I think this is MK Ultra going on right now. And I think we're going to be talking about MK Ultra. Welcome to the show today, Kimberly. How are you?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, and this is the first time we've talked, which is normal for people coming on Brandenburg News Network. We just get it on, we have coffee in the morning and talk about everything. This is a totally non-censored platform. You may say anything you want to say in any way you wish to say it. And awesome. This has been an area of interest for me for a very long time. So, and I've actually run into people who have been MK Ultra'd. And you can see it. Once you see it, you'll be able to see it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
So tell us about your story and where you were, how you got there, and where you are now.
So I'm in a much better place, obviously, because writing the book was part of my therapy to get through the betrayal trauma that I faced with my family. I think it's a little more than MK Ultra. Like, I definitely was a targeted individual where, I experienced the coercive control, which combines coercion, the use of force or threats to persuade, with control, the use of power to influence or direct behavior. It was very much a PsyOps, co-intel program. And
do you believe it's like a satanic, like, we talked to a lot of people who've been through like satanic ritual abuse, that sort of thing. Is it all tied in?
I believe it is. I think these people, people who are victims of being a target the perpetrators are committing a hate crime. And those perpetrators are probably part of a more evil, systemic problem in the world, because I don't think it's just in the United States that these programs are happening. I think it's a worldwide global agenda to take people down that are going to be strong and speak out for the betterment of humanity. And so when I first realized it, they hit me hard in April of last year, 2023. So I was hit with direct energy warfare, and basically my ex-parents, I'm going to call them that because I won't talk to these people again, had their commissioner friend, because they're billionaires, highly politically connected in the Democratic Party. And they got their commissioner friend to serve me a petition to have me mentally institutionalized against my will for 360 days. And when they couldn't get that to stick, when I went to my first hearing, which was at Huntsman Behavioral Institute, which I thought was odd, I walked in and the judge said, well, you're obviously not here for mental illness. You're here for drug addiction. And I said, well, I guess I'm here for whatever you want me to be here for. And she said, well, do you have counsel? And I said, well, I've been requesting a public defender and have been denied in my requests. And she said, well, I'm going to delay this case for 2 weeks. You need to have 2 essential treatment evaluations done, and you need to obtain counsel. And so then my nightmare, began from there. So all of the judicial system is kind of corrupt for the most part. Thank goodness I had a commissioner who finally dismissed the case in February of this year. But yeah, it was nothing short of a nightmare. But if they would have been able to institutionalize me, my 2 adult children working for me at the time could have hostilely taken over my business, because what would have happened is the court would have granted my kids executor over my estate, and they could have sold off my real estate, assets stripped me, because I would have been put away for almost a year.
Wow. Wow. And this came from your ex-parents?
Yeah, my ex-parents and my ex-children,
I'm
and
so sorry. I'm so sorry.
it's like that's the betrayal trauma that started. So now I'm in therapy for EMDR and inter IFS, so interfamily systems, and yeah. So
How did you get into it? Let's talk about the coercion that you received over your life and when you kind of realized that this was not okay.
when they started overstepping their boundaries in April of 2023, so I've been in this for more than 18 months. And going back and pulling all of my records, my parents ended up calling the medical crisis outreach team, or community outreach program, which is where people, get into your business. But when things started, when you realize that your neighbors are like plotting against you, it's not a very good feeling. So I ended up selling my condominium, which is part of the asset stripping too. It's all like a psyops game to get people to break down mentally so that they can be institutionalized or do something that's out of character. So they'll either try to get you institutionalized in a mental institution, or they'll try to get you taken away to jail for something that is out of character if they drive you to that point in this psyops program. So I don't know if I answered your question.
How did when you were younger, did you realize this was going on as you were like a younger person, and what were the tactics they used to coerce you?
Okay, so when I was younger, I had an experience when I was 5 years old. I was molested by a family member. And that traumatic event made me be hyper aware and not very trusting of people. That was a traumatic experience. And then I ended up losing my daughter when she was 23 of metastasized breast cancer.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was 4 years of me trying to find alternative methods to cure her cancer, which so she battled for 4 years where I took care of her. So if there were any time that I was going to become a drug addict, it probably would have been then, when I lost my daughter 9 years ago, and she was 23. But other than that, I don't remember anything like some of these individuals where I hear have been, repeatedly put into sexual trauma to be part of this satanic sort of program. I moved away from home at a very young age, and thank goodness I was a latchkey kid. And a lot of people don't know what a latchkey kid is. It's a child that stays home alone and basically raises themselves. So I didn't have a lot of supervision when I was younger. The first time I left school, I was 4 years old and in kindergarten. So I didn't really go with the institutions, including the institution of education. I was like, I don't think I need to be here. I think I'm just going to go home now. So they didn't really get to me until like I'm 53 right now. And so it's like they hit me hard in my adult life, and I'm not sure why. It was like I was being bounty hunted, like a real life Hunger game to take me out. So it was interesting because I was watching this guy who did a video 8 years ago about gang stalking and how systematic and methodical this program is. And you could just piss someone off. And it only takes 2 calls into the fusion center to put you on that watch list, right? So in my case, when I knew something was going on, I called the FBI locally and federally, went down to see the FBI and in person here off of Amelia Earhart Drive. And the agent just looked at me and said, "Do you want to know what I would do if I've been targeted?" And I just looked at him and said, "What?" And he said, "Well, I would take some," and they were, "Do you want to know what I would do if I had been targeted and they were contaminating my water?" Which was interesting that he said that, because it never said anything about them contaminating me with water. I said, "This is psychological, chemical warfare that they're doing on me. I understand that they're doing it and I want it to stop." And he said, "I would take your water into URAP, which is like a forensic testing lab, and hire a private investigator," which I already had one at that time, and he hasn't discovered anything. I just let that go because they won't ever let you bring it to light, right? So recently, earlier this year, I took it all the way up to the Department of Justice. And I said, if not anything, I've had a violation of HIPAA. And there's a very nefarious act going on here politically in the state of Utah. And it probably involves the overreach of the church.
What was the reaction?
Nothing. He just, I got an email back from the Department of Justice. They will never tell you if they're looking into your case, and they don't want you to call. So there's like no protection for any type of a person being involved in the MK Ultra program, because I then, started doing my research. And when I told my aunt and uncle last November about everything that had happened to me, they're the ones who were like, "That sounds like MK Ultra." And I was like, "Okay, let's see what this looks like." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's exactly what it is."
I'm going to bring on Christina here a minute. Morning, Christina. How you doing?
Wow. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. Can you describe MK Ultra to people out there that might not know what it is? And I'd like to hear what's in your book.
So MK Ultra is a mind control program, and they don't need anything to do that. I feel like I have been chipped in several different places. Like I have 2 crowns that I don't need that I've put an RF, detector up to, and they can control your limbs without using anything. Like if you look at Dr. Jack Cruz, I don't know if you know who he is. He's like a neurologist. They used to do experimentation on monkeys and stuff. Well, he's a good person to look at if the listeners want to research him, Dr. Jack Cruz. He's living in exile because he's a whistleblower, along with Edward Snowden. So if listeners don't know who Edward Snowden is, they need to look at him. He's also living in exile in Russia for being a whistleblower about these government programs. So
can I interject real quick?
Absolutely. Yes.
So MK Ultra, it was started, I believe, in the 60s, somewhere around then, by a gentleman by the name of Cameron. Our CIA was essentially funding different types of research projects. One was at I believe it's the Allen Institute in Montreal, and they used different types of procedures. They call it depattering. So the first thing that they do is they tear you down, and to where you don't know your family, you don't know your name. That way they can, essentially it was to build you back up, and they use things like LSD and shock therapy. It's not that way anymore. Whatever they found from that, before 1960, there was no chemical, like the United States didn't have drug problems and didn't have chemical warfare going on. After the MK Ultra stuff, which essentially was our CIA, funding different programs. They found something. I don't know what they found, but they found a way to control people chemically. And I think that goes to what maybe your water situation. They have to be able to tear you down, and then they can control you. There were sleep studies where they put people to sleep for like 23 days, and they would play tapes over and over
Subliminal
and over.
messaging. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's people don't realize that MK Ultra is in our everyday media. If you look on your iPhone and you start to go through the little stickers, the first stickers you will see pop up are rainbow stickers. That alone, that type of thing alone is essential to the programming of the people. So they've learned to do that individually and then on a mass scale. So whatever they found to take them from the 60s to now, I question a lot of things as being MK Ultra. A lot of these people that seem normal, that have normal lives, and then all of a sudden they do something fucking weird, I would venture to say that type of stuff is MK Ultra as well.
Yeah, so MK Ultra started in 1953 or 47. If you really look back at it, it started in 1947. They said that they ended the program in 1971. They didn't end the program; they've just perfected it.
Right.
Kind of like LifeLog going into Facebook. You know, that was a DARPA funded project, and then all of a sudden, the same day that LifeLog went away, Facebook came up, and they just repackage it.
They just repackage it. That's right, for mind control. But Google is actually a CIA product, you know, where they're tracking you that way. Like, essentially, none of us have any privacy. And if we don't have our privacy, then we don't have our freedom, which is what I intend to do, is just getting the message out, because I knew that I wasn't the only one, which is why I wrote the book about it, because I'm like, this is sick and twisted. And if I didn't have the mental fortitude or the financial means to fight it, they would have taken me out.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't have those two things. They don't have those. So can you imagine the people that are actually affected? Have you got to the part yet about why you think they did that? Why you think they've done this? I don't know what part you've told so far.
I haven't gotten to the part. Why I believe that I was targeted is because I would not comply. And I think that they knew, like, by psychologically profiling me, that I was a person that was going to start speaking out against this, and that people would actually listen to what I was saying and start researching this on their own.
Well, it's a voice of reason in a world of chaos, because if they can keep everybody in a state of chaos and off balance and looking around like that, nobody can focus in on what's real. And I think that's all part of it. And you can, when somebody's really seriously under MK, where they've done experiments on, I've met people like that, and you, like I said, you can't unsee it once you see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like an unreal persona. It's an unreal persona, an unreal happiness, or something like that. It's just it's a little out of touch with reality. There's no balance there, and kind of interesting. Well, let's talk about what's in the book.
Yeah. So the book is basically written as a diary. It's basically my memoir of when I figured out what was really happening in April of 2023, April 25th of 2023 to be exact.
So this is recent. People need to understand that.
Yeah.
When they think about MK Ultra, they think about, you know, things that were done in the past, and that is not the case.
Correct. Yeah. And so I wrote the book, obviously, like a diary, and I went through date by date everything that happened. And I'm not sure if you are aware of Dr. James Giordano. He teaches at West Point Military Academy. He starts off one of his speeches by going, drugs, bugs, and bioweapons. I can make anyone do, say, think, feel anything I want them to do.
That's some messed up stuff.
Yeah, it's nefarious. And so I'll send you guys a video link. It's on my social media. I've posted it a few times.
Can you put it in the private chat there? Yeah,
I think I can.
I can bring that up and then show everybody what we're talking about. And then I will, as always, post the links in my Telegram channel at Brandenburg #4 MI. So put it on X too. So there you go.
So I ended my book when I ended up getting out of the addiction recovery center, because my attorney at the time was like, oh, we're going to get you out of this. We're going to have you take a plea deal going into an addiction recovery center as a partially hospitalized patient for 30 days. And I'm like, I don't want to take that deal, but I guess whatever's going to get these people off of my back, right? And I'll put this in the post. Let me just.
What were they charging you with?
What was that?
There was no charges.
Was there any charges? Did they charge you with anything? So what would you do a plea deal for?
Exactly. No, they didn't charge me with anything. But then you've got someone who's never been in the system, so to speak. So I didn't really know what my civil rights were at that time. And so I had to discover that out very, very quickly and realize that the judicial system is like a moneymaker, right?
Oh, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Sick.
With your target, that's virtually.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I ended up taking the plea deal thinking they'd go away after I'm taking all of these UAs and doing a breathalyzer every day in this program. I mean, at least I got my therapist out of it. I am a very optimistic person. So at least I got a book and a good therapist out of the deal.
So you believe that the dude from Match.com was sent to you specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened with that, with the Match.com guy?
That's
so in my book, I go through, and then I'm like, during COVID in the lockdowns, I ended up going on a dating website or several dating websites, right? And I think that they identify single, successful, outspoken women on Match.com to become targets. Because if you really look at targeted individuals, 67% of them are women. And I think that they identified me that way to bring in a handler. And I feel like I've had more than one handler, obviously. But through that, they'll try to get you addicted to drugs. Like if you're not taking any pharmaceutical medication, they'll try to get you addicted to some other drug. Like they tried to get me addicted to methamphetamines, which it would take a shit ton of drugs to get me addicted because I just don't have that personality. I'd get tired of them before I'd get addicted to them. But there is one element that I'm still trying to discover about the drug portion of the MK Ultra program, which is why I sent you the video, because Dr. James Giordano in there says drugs, bugs, and bioweapons. So they have to have some sort of drug in your system in order to be able to control you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It helps open up your mind to different, altering substances.
Really
Yes.
nothing you can do.
Is this what you want us to watch?
I can disrupt an individual from the level of their cell to their system, and disrupt individuals on a variety of levels, from individuals all the way up to the social fabric. Target a specific individual, change or eliminate that individual with very little attribution and trace, and be able to leave prior to any attribution.
Who here actually feels like they are under surveillance pretty regularly? Everyone inside of Occupy.
That's pretty messed up, but that quote alone, what a psychopath, a nut job.
Well, and there are the people who are running this country and these programs are psychopaths. Like that's why they're doing it, because they don't have any like morals or values or empathy for humanity. Like they're just like psychos. And as you could see, when he first started talking about that, he was very narcissistic. Like, I can do this.
I think that's a quality that a lot of them have.
Yeah.
You have to almost be that way, or your conscience and your morals would attack you at some point.
Which is really interesting, because how psychopaths are categorized is they're in the same category as sexual predators, as as well as narcissists. They're all kind of in the same category. They want to run people around like they're little trucks. They don't see people as people, and they think they're special.
Yeah.
They think they're smarter than everybody. They think they're special. They think they have the right to trample on other people and just use them for whatever, crazy plan they've got in their head for that day or whatever else comes up, and I actually was dug into that for a while, because I put together a program for bereavement for hospice, and the gal that I was working with on this, she was a therapist, and she had a master's in social work and such. And we were working on the next project was to deal with the narcissistic mind and the problems in that. So that's kind of an interesting area to be into, is to see how people's minds work.
Yeah,
Right.
the behavioral patterns of humans. How do you did you touch, I don't know how long, did you touch on like your parent aspect of them, how they tried to separate you from your family and stuff?
Yeah. So one of the parts of this program is isolation. So they basically wiped out my whole inner circle. They were having backdoor meetings on what they were going to do with me without even having a conversation with me about any of this, obviously.
So no informed consent.
Without informed consent. And so
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, I'm an adult woman, have a conversation with me, but it wasn't about that. It was about those children wanting my hard labor and my success. And so if there are two movies that I would suggest watching, it's called I Care a Lot. And I Care a Lot is about stripping elderly people of their assets, where these lawyers go into the courtroom and they deem these elderly people as incompetent, and then they're granted executor of these people's estate, and they are able to sell off their assets and then put them in an old folks home.
And it happens every day, every single day.
So that's why I'm saying the judicial system is part of the program, because these people are just taking advantage of other people.
Well, and if you look at like the conservators that are out there, I mean, it's a full-time job being a guardian and a conservator. And a lot of these guardians and conservators, the guardians ad litem and conservators that are out there within the government, they're getting paid buco dollars to strip people of their assets. This should never happen. It's absolutely insane.
It is insane. And also another thing that I think people should watch is a Netflix series called The Program. It's about this institution where these people are convinced that their children are taking drugs and that they need to go be institutionalized. And at the end of it, that they, which is based on a true story, these kids were not taking anything, but they were physically, mentally, and verbally abused in these institutions, which is kind of like a Synanon style program. But it led back to a billionaire's mansion here in southern Utah. So these programs are money makers, and the community outreach programs need to stop, because it's not used for the betterment of helping someone. It's actually trying to break them down and get them to move or put them in a mental institution or a prison. So it's all very systematic. It's all very much a web of deceit. And as you said before, Donna, once you go down that rabbit hole, you can never unsee what you've seen.
Yeah, and it's kind of freaky. I had one gal that showed up and she was like, "Hi," and she's like this. I mean, it was like even her motions were just like, I sat back and I was kind of like, okay, you stay on the other side of the room right now because you're clearly not in control of anything going on in your head.
Yeah.
And it was a little disturbing. I had one of my other researchers friends that was there. We saw it in action. And when she said something about working in Haiti, and I said, "Oh, then you know about Laura Silsby and the child trafficking that was going on there?" She went white as a ghost. Wouldn't say one. It was like completely like it was kind of crazy. And
Yeah.
then but when I put it out there, and then of course me being the smart aleck I am, I just kind of kept ratcheting the pressure up a little bit and seeing what she actually did with it, because I'm like, you just told me all I need to know, that you
Exactly.
in fact are in the network of child trafficking. And there was no it was very unreal. It was very unreal. And then the connections behind her got worse and worse and worse, including pulling kids' teeth. And you're like, okay, your job was to pull kids' teeth in Haiti. That's all I need to know,
Yeah.
Listen, I had an experience with my daughter when she was 15 and a dentist before she was going to get her braces. They wanted to fill a cavity and that I could not visually see on the x-ray. And they kept telling me, "Oh, it's there. You're not a dentist. You haven't been trained." And I'm like, "But you're telling me something is there and I cannot fucking see it. So we are not doing this."
Yeah.
And every time someone says something about like the dentist thing with MK Ultra or the sex trafficking, my mind always goes back to that day, like them trying to legit fill a cavity that was never there. I didn't let them. I told them to fuck off. I'm gonna put a child through all that pain. I don't know what their intention was, but it may have not been that. But that's the experience that I think of every time I hear that.
Is there a lot that goes with that? You said you feel like you've been chipped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have 2 crowns that I didn't need. So part of the targeting individuals, well, I have a list here of items that I pulled off of Dr. Catherine Horton's website. I don't know if you know who Dr. Catherine Horton is.
I don't. This is all new to me.
You can also go to any targeted site. I ended up falling upon Targeted Justice, where they're like isolation, dental aesthetics that you don't need. He literally said, I need to replace this crown. And I'm sitting in his chair, and all of a sudden, 2 teeth have been filed down, and now I need an adjacent crown. And I didn't see anything on the x-ray either, Christina. And so when you're not aware of these programs, you're just thinking innocently, right? I don't think that way. So I'm like, okay, I guess I needed him. But then after I got out of his chair, and it was too late by then as he was drilling away, I was like, there's something not right here, like literally. And that was March of 2023. And then I started piecing it together going, I have been targeted and this is not okay.
So what are some symptoms that someone would go through if they were, had something implanted in a dental procedure, or Timothy McVeigh says that they put something up his, rear, right?
Yeah.
So what would be symptoms of that?
So subliminal messaging, voice to skull, body reactions. Like I have had experiences where I wasn't like fully in control of my body, where they were trying to stimulate my limbs, where I literally was going through these movements in the makeup aisle at Walmart, where they were trying to jerk my body in certain ways, using me as an experiment, basically. And so I stood up and I said, I understand that you people are trying to help me, but I just said, thank you, but fuck you. And I walked out of Walmart, because all of these large major corporations that are actually running the government are running part of these private R&D research and development projects.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I don't think that the American people really understand how integrated some of this corruption is with some of these bigger companies.
Yeah.
If you look at anybody that came out was a nobody, and I'll reference Taylor Swift, and the audience can feel how they want about Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
But you're all of a sudden given all of this stuff. You're successful. You got money. You're just a millionaire overnight. Those are situations I would question. As far and with the companies, Walmart is notoriously a company. While they came on the scene, they put small businesses out of business,
Yeah.
and they bought from China, and so it became cheaper products. But they market it to the Americans as cheaper products. And what did that do to our society? With the small businesses, American made goods. So you have to consider those things as possibly some kind of infiltration in a large company. And they say that Walmart has some kind of system to order military weapons. So if you take all these conspiracy theories, and you will find that there is always some kind of truth to them, just like MK Ultra. Oh, that was a conspiracy theory, but we know now that it's the truth. So you got to kind of deprogram yourself from all the programming that society has done
Yes.
over the last 30 years.
Yeah. And
Well,
how,
the
yeah.
mental illness that's out there too. So like some of the mental illnesses that are out there, and you really have to ask some questions, deep questions about where and how did this develop in people, and why is it now that we have so many people on so many medications, besides the fact that big pharma is absolutely
integrated.
completely evil and integrated. But when you see all the rest of the lack of coping and mental illness going on, it's increased. People have lack of purpose. There's a lot of things you can see, and you have to ask those questions. It's like even say like schizophrenia or that, what's really going on here.
Right. And so that they're creating the mental illness. They're breaking people down and calling them schizophrenics, and which they tried to do to me. And I'm like, no, I've never had any mental illness, and I work on myself. I have been in therapy for a very long time. But they're part of the program, because if you think about it, how else are they going to fill the proverbial beast, right? How else are they going to fill their hospitals to get paid the insurance that we're all contributing to, or fill their prisons to get the money they need to run their institution? It's all completely connected. Like it's like a web of deceit. I listened to a 4-hour podcast on a Danny Jones podcast where that Dr. Jack Kruse was on it, and he explained it in detail. It took him 4 hours to do it, but once you connect the dots, you don't unconnect them.
While you said Danny Jones, let me elaborate on Danny Jones.
Yeah.
Danny Jones had a guest on his show that he is now supporting by the name of Dr. Amen, who is now on YouTube blowing up very quickly with some very sick ideologies, and there is some links to pedophilia in that. This guy was exiled from the church for whatever reason. And it's funny that you mentioned Danny Jones, because I have a guest for you, Donna, I've been meaning to talk to you about, that was actually in this cult-like stuff. And how he ended up on Danny Jones is I'm very unsure of, because before I heard that story, I always thought that, Danny Jones was, just an investigative journalist. But now I'm noticing a pattern with the people that he is putting on his show.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when I look at people who have the large numbers and popularity and such, unless they've been at it for a very, very, very long time, I'm always suspect of, to see that kind of behavior, because to me, it's indicative that they're there for a reason. And questioning, why were they allowed in a system that is completely rigged and controlled? Why were they allowed to have that kind of of an overnight success rocket behind them? Because I think that so much of it's controlled. You need to ask those questions. That's why I'm for like a smaller venues, decentralized of everything, and really check out who you're talking to, because I think most of this is engineered on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
I don't see it as one side of the aisle. I see it as both sides of the aisle. And as I tell several of my friends who get kind of annoyed with me, I'm like, they're all lying their asses off.
They are.
It's lying their
lies.
They're all lying for money, or they're lying for money, or they're lying for pushing a narrative. They're taking orders from someone. This is so prevalent. And honestly, people say, who do you listen to? Who do you follow? I'm like, I don't.
I need to correct myself. So the doctor's name is David Charles Almond Hillman, and how he blew up was being on the Danny Jones podcast. And people are essentially saying that this man has started a cult. And I have I know one of the girls that left this cult thing, and she is willing to speak on it.
Well, but, I tell you, look at how the political parties work. The political parties are a cult system.
Yeah.
And of course, no, they're not. Donna, we're all in there doing the right thing. No, it functions like a cult. If you look at it, you either go along with what the agenda is, or you do not progress.
Correct.
And that's how they vet. And so it's a group thing, and it's a problem. And then, there's some other dynamics to it, but there's so many of these organizations out there. Even when you look in industry, the cartels, there's industry cartels, not just drug cartels. It's the industry cartels that are out there. You go along to build a cartel up, and you'll get contracts, you'll get favors, you get all these things. Yeah. And it goes right back to the satanic system of giving you. Satan will offer you the world on a silver platter. You won't be given anything. And when you see those kind of mechanisms, go right back to the Bible. It's nothing new. This stuff's been going on for years. God was really trying to put it out in front of us so that we would hopefully ding, 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 wake up a little sooner, so we didn't have to go through this. Yeah. But it is absolutely just like the secret societies. It's a cult mentality.
Yes, absolutely. It's all linked together, and they're spewing their narrative with social media, the mainstream media. I stopped watching mainstream media a couple weeks into the COVID, the pandemic is what I call it. And the pandemic, it was definitely planned. And
sure.
And I just couldn't. I'm like, you people are fear mongering. You're trying to push people into getting this vaccination, which isn't even tested. That was one of the reasons why I feel like I was also targeted, because I didn't get the vaccination. Maybe my ex-billionaire parents have, stock in big pharma, who knows? But we got in fights in restaurants about it. And I just finally said, we're not talking about this. I don't even get the flu vaccination. Why would I get this jab? No.
Well, it shows that you're a critical thinker, and that, in a way though, I really do feel sorry for the people that are caught into the system, because just like the narcissists and psychopaths, they didn't necessarily choose this path from the beginning. Most of it starts before they were 4 years old themselves. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of a victim too. And if you talk to a lot of people who are psychopaths or narcissists, they know there's something wrong with them. They do know that there's something wrong with them, but they can't get out of it. And, it's not that you stay within these relationships and just continue to let them tear you down or beat you up. You got to be able to put your boundaries up there. But, truly, when God says to pray for our enemies or those that have done us harm, those people that have hurt us are exactly the same ones that we should be full on praying for to help them out of this very dark spot that they're in.
Yeah,
Now,
I agree with that.
Kimberly, do you want to talk about your land? I'm talking about the smart city.
Oh, yeah. So when I was talking to my aunt and uncle, because they were ostracized too for not taking the vaccination, and when they, when I was telling them the story, and they said that sounds like MK Ultra, and I came back and was telling them, my mother at the time was a real estate agent when I purchased the condo, and she didn't want me to purchase it for some reason. So I ended up as a title and insurance company owner, working my own deal. And so I ended up purchasing the condo. And I said, I need to move from here, because if I don't move, they're going to kill me with this direct energy warfare. Like, I literally was sitting on my porch. My hair went from straight to frizzy. And I'm like, I'm not going to live through this. So then my uncle pulled up the smart city agenda for Salt Lake City. And he said, your condominium complex is smack dab in center of the 10.5 mile radius in that 15-minute city. And I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting to me as well. It's funny how multiple faceted this is. Like, we started talking about MK Ultra, and then we go to these. It involves these other things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why they targeted you specifically, but it seems like to me there were multiple positive outcomes of you being targeted. Like, if you didn't want to sell that condo, which I don't know if what you're thinking at the time was, that would almost seem like a reason to target you. To get control of your assets. Someone would have a conservatorship over you, and then you'd be easy peasy.
I think they psychologically profile people when they know that they have the ability to speak out in an eloquent manner against the establishment that is created to control us. And I don't think that they thought that people would start speaking out on private platforms. And I always tell people they need to look at the people that got kicked off of social media and ask the question why they got kicked off social media.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the censorship on social media.
That's where BNN came from, is that I got nuked off of Twitter and stopped on almost every platform and
for speaking the truth.
Yeah,
I ran for governor, so it was like holding my beer with the censorship. It was amazing, and couldn't have Brandenburg up there because she might actually tell where the bear shits in the woods, and gets real on this stuff, because I'm not going to be quiet about it, and I'm not buying their bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So you're a freedom fighter, just like I am. Like, we're literally fighting for the people who are being mind controlled, who have no idea that they're being mind controlled, basically.
And
look
it's
at programming in our schools. I mean, the programming in our schools with the grooming that's going on. You can't say that it's anything else when they start doing pornography and all of the sexually explicit stuff to our kids in school. That is grooming, and they should be prosecuted for such things. They're literally setting these kids up for a lifetime of failure, and call it out for what it is. I mean, we need to call it out. They're child groomers. They're the beginning stages of child trafficking, which is rampant in our nation.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to touch on something. So this is something else I think that they're doing. So I seen a piece. There was some studies in Massachusetts and Boston about preschoolers being expelled and suspended from school. And once I looked into it, it came about that 250 preschool kids get suspended or expelled from school every single day. These kids are, listen, I'm not even done. They're 3 years old. Why would you? And most of them, although black children, black boys only make up 18% of children in preschool, they are expelled at 48%. So why would you want to expel a child at the age of 3 if not only to make them feel some type of way? And I'm like, they're making these kids, because if I was 3, I could imagine, I got expelled. I would feel like, the worst little child on the earth. Are you doing this?
If you got to expel a 3-year-old, you suck as a teacher, a human being, and a parent, right? I mean, that should be the baseline for knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that you suck as a human being.
So you're creating at a very young age a negative impact on a child's idea of schooling.
Wow. I did not know that. This is just a new level of craziness to come across into my world down in Brandenburg,
Well, I don't know why I keep wanting to call you Tiffany. I apologize. Kimberly. So we have a few minutes left. Tell us what your plan is going forward as far as what you want to accomplish with your book and speaking out. Where do you want to go from here?
I just want people to wake the fuck up. Like, if I'm just going to say it very plainly, like, if we don't do a grassroots movement on taking control of our government, we will be enslaved for the rest of humanity, whatever that looks like. And I don't feel like shaming a 3-year-old child is the way to go about it. So the more that people are aware of this, the more we can actually fight back against the establishment that is basically created to control us. And I don't like to be told what to do. And I'm pretty sure a whole lot of other people that are out there listening don't like to be told what to do. So this is our time to take action. We can't sit and complain about it on social media and all of these platforms. If you know you're a targeted individual, which 99% of us are, the targeting is adjusted to each person, whether or not you're going to speak out against this. It's time to take action and start not having the courage enough to do so. And my feeling on it is, if I'm a target already and they're trying to take me out, I will not STFU.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it goes back to really, I'm going to bring it back to the Bible again. It goes back to, you either fear God or you fear man. And you need to stand up and realize that go to God. He'll give us answers on things, but don't be afraid to step out and make people a little annoyed with you. That's okay. It's probably part of the growth time. Consider yourself a mom that's putting your kids in a little bit of a time out situation for maybe being off the rails a little bit. Don't worry about it. You should be more worried about telling the truth and doing the right thing. A real friend doesn't tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear. A good parent doesn't pander to you, doesn't pander to their children. They actually raise their children, and they will tell them the hard questions or the hard things that help us to be better people, stronger people, the invisible qualities of God, integrity, honor, doing things for the right thing, caring about being a caretaker for the planet, a steward of those things that are God's, not just doing what you will, running here and there, which the Bible told us was going to happen anyway. But, really, really doing the right things and standing up, even when you're being pushed back against. Refuse to capitulate, or they're going to turn you into a lemming, and you're going to jump off the cliff with the rest of the lemmings, or the sheep to the slaughter.
Yeah,
So
I think
Absolutely. That was very well put. Absolutely.
I spent a lifetime being ornery against these systems. Just let you know. So
I think
yeah.
people are afraid that they'll be alone in their stepping out process when they come out with the truth. Just know that you are not alone. There are tons of us out here willing to support you. You are not alone. You just need to do the right thing.
Going to find the best friends of your entire life.
Right.
And the ones that are willing to stand not only against things that are wrong, but to stand up for your rights and your, the things that are right, the things that make human beings great. It's like, and it's all of those invisible things. It's not money. It's not fame. It's not power. It's humbly coming forward, speaking the truth, and being there to help each other out in God's sandbox. His sandbox, right. He makes the rules. And that's just the way it is. And suck it up, buttercups. You're not God. He is, and pretty extra sure that that's where he is the best suited to be in our lives. Yes, sir. Thank you, Papa.
Every time you say suck it up, buttercup, I had a friend, my very best friend, he passed away in 2021. He was clean for a long time, then he relapsed. And the people that brought him the drugs left him there to die. But one thing he used to say to me was, suck it up, buttercup. And every time you say that, I get this flash of image, and I'm like, yep, there it is, right there. There it is.
Oh, that's fun. God definitely brings us together, doesn't he?
Amen.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really, really appreciate
pleasure.
it.
I hope I've given someone some information to at least go research. And
I really have. Here, I'm going to bring your podcast up. You're so pretty. I pulled this up this morning, and I'm like, wow, you're a pretty woman.
Thank you.
God has really made given you quite a gift. You're absolutely beautiful.
She's got the same cheekbones I got.
What's that?
She's got the same cheekbones I've got.
Yeah, you both are beautiful.
I noticed that, Christina, when we were on the phone the other day.
Yeah,
hey,
definitely.
You guys have the great cheekbones. I've got ornery, so you got to have that something going for you. So, but anyhow, there's your podcast. It's unveilingshadows.com, as well as her book, to help people understand what she said. Well, thank you for coming on today. I'd love to have you back on again.
Yeah, I would love that. Stay strong.
Thank you. Oh, there you go. The hearts. That's wonderful. We're going to go to a real quick break here, a 30-second break, and I'll be back with Caleb Collier, and we'll be talking with him in just a minute. Have a great day, and 30 seconds, we'll be back. Good morning and welcome to the third hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it is the 20th day of November 2024. Welcome to our show, and I'm going to welcome in my next guest, Caleb Collier from Church and State. Is the host of Church and State, and he's also a faith contributor to Turning Point. So welcome on this morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Slight correction: I am no longer with Turning Point. I'm full time with Church and State.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. So how are you today?
I am doing very well. It's an interesting situation we find ourselves in. I was listening to your past guests there, and I loved what they had to say. I loved all three of you ladies talking about standing up against any type of tyranny wherever we find it. It's definitely a subject that I love approaching.
I love this. And when I look at all of these situations, quite honestly, I go back to the fact that we are in a war, and the war is a spiritual war. and it's good versus evil. I think there's so much more spiritual going on here than what's going on in, say, the natural world. And because we've walked away from God, our nation has pretty much walked away from God. I think we've had quite a revival here. You know, when God puts a little bit of pressure on all of us, we tend to get back on the straight, narrow path again, which is a wonderful thing. But I think that there's so much damage that has been done in the spiritual world that we have to come back to that. We have to come back to the standard. The standard is the Bible and the fact that God gave us his word as his instruction manual. And, you know, we can always go back to that and find that stability in a world of chaos. So what would you like to talk about today? I'm once again very interested in your I woke up one day and I was thinking about education, and I'm like, oh, Caleb, need to talk to Caleb and see what's going on. But what's your opinion of what's going on in the world right now?
Well, I love so much of what you were just saying right there. And honestly, the blame falls squarely on the American church. We've been asleep at the wheel, and we made our Christianity very boring. If you really read the Bible, and I love what you said about that, the Word of God, that's our standard. But if you really read the Bible, it's a very supernatural world, as you just pointed out. It's exciting. There's stuff in there that normal pastors just won't simply touch. You know, they talk about the gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Jesus loves you. But what about all the other stuff in there? There's a lot that the Bible has to say about government, for example, and tyrannical government. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, our founding fathers, as they created this wonderful nation that's existed for almost 250 years, the reason why America was great was because Jesus Christ was front and center. The representative form of government was first established with the Israelites all the way back in Exodus 18. That's where we first see it. It's where Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, observes how he's governing and recommends to him, hey, establish judges over 10s, 50s, 100s, and make sure that they're righteous men, men that are honorable. And then if there's kind of a hierarchy to that system, if the judge over 10s can't figure out the dispute, then they kick it up. That's a representative form of government. It worked for Israel, God's chosen people, and it worked for the United States as well. And as we've transitioned from a Republican form of government, little r Republican form of government, into this idea that we're a democracy, this is why the system is failing. I mean, I know I'm a conservative. I'm not supposed to be triggered by words, but democracy triggers me. It makes me angry. When people say that conservatives or far-right people are a threat to democracy, yeah.
Good. I feel the
we
same
don't
way.
want it.
It's good. It's a failed IQ test for me when somebody uses the word democracy. It's a lack of understanding, because democracy is mob rule.
Exactly.
That's what it is. It's the least stable form of government. A representative form of government, a Republican form of government, is the most stable and ensures the rights of the individual.
You're absolutely right. Our founding fathers wrote extensively on their hatred for democracy because they knew democracy is just a transitional form of government. And if you really study the history of republics throughout the world, throughout the centuries, you see that a republic transitions to a democracy, which is very short-lived. Democracy always transitions into some type of anarchy, which I think if we look at America, we can see that anarchy is certainly on the rise. And anarchy always results in some type of totalitarian government, because the people, they want order. They want some strong man to emerge, and they typically do. They take advantage of the situation, and we end up losing all of our rights. And that's not something that you or I or most of the audience, that's not something we want for America. We want to return back to the standard of the Republic, of the Declaration and the Bill of Rights. And really, honestly, and I know people get accused of being Christian nationalists when they talk this way, but we have to return to Jesus Christ. John Adams is a very famous quote. He says that our Constitution was made for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to any other. If we are sensing or seeing cracks in the system, it's because we are not a moral and religious people.
Yeah, I would have to say that we can all look at things out there and say things just aren't working the way that they were supposed to work. And you can go back to when we still had, we had prayer in school. We had, the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was talking to my kids about it. I remember when I was in school, them putting the flag up every morning, taking it down at the end of the day and folding it up. There was such a reverence there for different things. And people, we would never have talked back to the teachers or said anything is disrespectful. I mean, we were there to learn. We weren't there to be out of control. And unfortunately, that's what I've talked to a lot of teachers, and they're sick of teaching. I really don't know any teachers that I've talked to that are actually enjoying teaching anymore. It's a job, they went to college for it, but it's become institutional and they're being forced to do things that they don't agree with.
Well, it's because government screws everything up. We know that. I mean, throw any system that's been created, healthcare, education, whatever it may be, government screws it up. We know that about it. It's the free market that encourages that competition, and the best schools are built for this example, right? I mean, I love that there were some silver linings to the pandemic, and one of those was that parents all of a sudden became very aware of what their kids were being taught, and what happened? There was a mass exodus from the public education system, or I refer to it as the public indoctrination system. So now we have all these private schools, co-ops, parents are homeschooling their kids, and there's so many different options out there. It's been a very positive move for us, and it actually makes me feel kind of positive, kind of excited about what the future is going to bring. I mean, for the longest time, every single generation has always been, oh, the next generation, oh, they're terrible. I mean, I don't even know how to communicate with these people. I don't see that for the future. I see a great awakening. I see people that are interested in pursuing truth. That truth has been under attack for a very long time because it's all part of the Marxist destabilization. I mean, if you can point at one thing that has been successful in this country, is that Marxist destabilization that's been occurring at least since the 1950s. Well, people are starting to get tired of that. They're starting to get tired of this idea that your truth is different from my truth. Now, there's got to be some legitimate truth. There's got to be a standard that we point to and say this is true, and we base everything off of that. And I see a lot of people yearning for that, and it makes me feel very positive for the direction that America's going.
I feel the same way. I think all these changes needed to happen, and we really need to clean house, and we need to start nullifying. The best leader coming forward would be one that was focused on a nullification of all the nonsense that we have going on. I brought your website up here a minute. Let me pull that up, and wanted to show everybody where you can find Caleb on Church and State. I was very interested in some of the things that you've done when I saw your the education portion and the materials that you've created. I'm not sure where to find it on here, but I think this is just extraordinary.
Well, thank you very much. I've been at this since 2017 with Church and State. And it really stemmed from I'm a former politician, and I tell people don't hold out against me. I'm self-loathing, but I didn't last very long in the political system because I refuse to compromise. Because I'm a constitutionalist. I refer to myself as a biblitarian. I have some issues.
I like that. I haven't heard that one before. That's good.
Thank you. I made it up. So, but yeah, I mean, I have some issues with the Libertarian Party. I love the non-aggression principles, but then they fall flat when they apply those non-aggression principles to the issue of life. If you agree, if you believe in non-aggression principles against your fellow man, well, then stop killing babies. That's pretty aggressive, right? So I refer to myself as a biblitarian because there has to be some morality to our political structure. In fact, there has to be a lot of morality to it. I hate the idea that you can't legislate morality. That's idiotic. Of course, you can legislate morality. Every single law, we look at it as a collective and say, is that a moral law? And my response when people say you can't legislate morality is well, then stop legislating immorality, because that's the current situation that we find ourselves in. The education, the education is a key point. There's a lot of shows out there that will talk about what's wrong in the world, but we've got to be educating individuals specifically, and so that's always going to be a key factor. If you're watching Church and State, is I want to educate people on issues like apologetics, being able to defend our faith. There's far too many Christians who, because of the issues in the American church, and a lot of this, I'm pointing fingers at pastors, is they don't teach. They don't teach. They don't make disciples. A lot of pastors will, dunk them. Hey, you're saved, and kind of forget about them. Discipleship takes work. It takes years of pouring into an individual so that they can always be ready to make a defense of their faith. And this is why we see so many youth groups, kids that go off to college and they meet some secular atheist professor who's very well educated, and they start attacking the Christian faith. And Christian kids are like, shoot, I don't really know how to respond here. And they're bringing up some really good points. Most Christian college kids end up losing their faith by the end of the 4 years. We shouldn't be allowing that as Christians, as the church. We should be building them up so that they can make a defense for their faith, and we can have a lot of fun doing it. Honestly, apologetics is fun. Like, anybody who's argumentative, who looks at the government, is like, no, I'm not doing that. Right? They can have fun with apologetics, because our Christianity, when people say, why are you a Christian? Because it's true. That's why I'm a Christian. It's as easy as that. This is the truth. I've studied it. I've looked into it. There's no other religion out there that makes sense, that is truthful. And so that's why I'm a Christian. And far too many people just don't have that mindset with it.
Do you have like a track or something like that where people can listen to the apologetics that you put out there in a systematic way?
I've done a number of shows, and so you just have to go onto the website and kind of search for it. I noticed when you were up there, I had the Nar Wars episode. This is a series that I've been doing. If people aren't familiar with the New Apostolic Reformation, it's a modern heresy, and we've got to be very careful within the church, because there is a lot of movements. There it is with Jordan Riley. There's a lot of movements that have emerged, and really this is nothing new. This has existed since the beginning of Christianity, the recorded history of it. They were dealing with Gnosticism. We're dealing with other issues like word of faith or prosperity gospel. Look, the Bible is pretty clear. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world that is going to persecute us. Now, as Americans, we kind of have those rose-colored glasses on. We've been prosperous for so long. We don't expect that. When you look out the rest of the world where Christians are being tortured and murdered and persecuted for their faith, we don't see that in America. But you know what? Jesus Christ himself guaranteed that we would face persecution. So we should expect it. And we should be joyful warriors on this. So that's one of the episodes that I've done that I think the audience would be very interested in. A lot of churches are having this NAR sneak into it, and they're not even aware of it. You got to be aware of the buzzwords, the specific doctrines that are being introduced that are really anti-biblical.
Can you give people a base knowledge of what that looks like?
Absolutely, yeah. So the NAR is most popular in the United States and Africa. And what it is, it's a very man-centric theology. And so to boil it down into a nutshell, basically they believe in this 7 mountain mandate. People have probably heard this before. Yes, and the mountains, the government and education and media and entertainment and family, there's a few others in there as well. But they believe that Christians are going to take over these 7 mountains. Now, these 7 mountains are found nowhere in the Bible. In fact, the closest we get to it is 7 hills that are described in Revelation, and that's not really a good thing. But once these Christians take over these 7 mountains, there's going to be a great transfer of wealth from the elitists, the satanic globalists, whatever you want to refer to them, to the Christians. And then we're going to be able to build God's kingdom here on earth. And then Jesus returns. And when Jesus returns, we basically kind of hand him his kingdom. Look at what we built for you. That's not anywhere in the gospel.
That's not the way it works.
It really isn't.
No.
But it's become very, very popular. And perhaps the biggest warning is it's become very popular within Christian patriot circles. Because we as Christians, especially Christian patriots here, we've been yearning for the church to actually stand up and do something similar to what we saw during the American Revolution with the Black Robe Regiment. We've been desiring that. Well, these NAR churches, because they believe in these 7 mountains, they're the ones most likely to get engaged in government. And so a lot of these churches, a lot of these pastors and leaders that you find that are pushing back against government intrusion, unfortunately, have this NAR doctrine. Either they're not very aware of it, or they're actually believers in this system. And so you got to be very cautious and careful. You have to be educated. You have to know what's going on so that you can correct it, because as believers, we're supposed to correct each other in a loving manner, but we're supposed to be able to rebuke each other and have questions and pursue the Bible. I mean, one of my favorite passages is when Paul commends the Bereans, not because they just accepted the faith, no, because they poured through the scriptures to ensure that this was truthful. Like they weren't, chastised over that. No, they're commended because they wanted to make sure, they wanted to put in the time and the education to ensure, yeah, this is the truth, and now we're going to follow it.
Can tell you what, whenever money shows up, there's always a problem. And I think if we look into it a little bit, what I've seen too is the connection between economic entities and such, like some of the globalist organizations, and they seem like they always want to be involved with the Seven Mountains Church, Amway, and in Grand Rapids, I believe they always have the pastors that show up there from that thing, and I've always been really suspect of that. I'm like, claim it and frame it, okay? So you're going to hold God to a contract? I'm not sure it works that way. It's like we don't say, well, we said all the right words, and so he's got to bless us because we did the right. No, he doesn't have to bless us because he doesn't. He's not exactly as interested in our comfort as he is our growth.
Amen to that. I mean, we can have so many examples throughout history and even personal experiences. God, is a loving God, absolutely. But he's also he's a jealous God. There's a lot of emotions tied to our Creator. And so if it requires us to go through persecution or pain so that we can enter into heaven, then of course he's going to do that. That's the most loving action he could possibly engage in. I told a personal story just the other day on my show. My grandfather was a man's man. He was a Marine. He was in Korea. He was at the Chosin Reservoir. Watched his friends get blown up. Really good looking guy. He came back, probably had some PTSD, but he was an alcoholic and he was a serial adulterer. And ultimately, he was hit by a car while he was walking, and he lost his leg, his arm, his face was peeled off. He was about to lose his other arm. He survived in the hospital for 2 months. And you know what? That was the most merciful thing possible, because my grandfather found Jesus Christ in that hospital room right before he died. So he went through a lot of pain, but you know what? He's got a new body, and he's with Jesus Christ in heaven. That's mercy. That's loving. Look, if it requires me to go through some persecution, so be it. I'm building treasures in heaven.
I always look at it this way: is we're on temporary assignment here. And so, this is we got like a work visa to be here, and we need to make every minute of our day count. What I've been thinking about lately, and what keeps being brought up, is the whole rapture, the issue of the rapture. You know what? I'm going to tell you right now, I would volunteer to stay.
Me too.
I really would, because when I see people go, we're better than everybody. God's going to rapture us out of there. He said he was, and on and on and on. It's like, and then they kind of gloat over people that are being left behind and getting what they deserve. Well, you know what? We all deserve that, just so we're clear on that. But I really think that if I had the choice to stay, I would stay, because.
Well, I might have good news for you, Donna.
So there you go. How's that for a statement?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'm actually at odds with the vast majority of the American church in that I don't believe in a pre-trib rapture. I believe in what's called pre-wrath rapture, or specifically the seventh trumpet rapture. So when we look through the book of Revelation, which, by the way, I love eschatology and I talk about it a lot on my show. When we look through it, I believe that Christians are here and go through the seals and all of the trumpets to the seventh trumpet. And there's a lot of scripture that points to that as well. We got First Thessalonians chapter 4, I believe, verse 12 or 16. 1 Corinthians 15:51 as well, that point to the seventh trumpet, and that's when we're ushered out. When we look at Revelation 14, it describes this great harvest, and it's after there's a lot of persecution. I mean, if we are told that the Antichrist makes war against the saints, wouldn't we expect to be here for that? Who's he making war against? Is it those that are left behind that become Christians after the fact? I don't see that anywhere in the Bible. I think there's going to be a time where the false prophet emerges and starts calling fire down from heaven, which is going to fool a lot of people, because unfortunately in the American church in particular, but I would say even throughout the world, we're seeking signs and wonders. And Jesus said that a wicked generation seeks signs and wonders. So we're looking for those signs and wonders. We're expecting these great manifestations. And if the false prophet comes and starts calling down fire from heaven and then points to this guy, hey, that's the Lord, that's God, I think a lot of people are going to be fooled by that. If we're required to have a mark to where we can buy, sell, or trade, that's the only way we can do that. Well, who would reject that if there's no Christians here on earth? Who's that geared to? Who's that engineered to? It's got to be us. So I think, Donna, you and I are going to be right there during the end of times, and we're going to be fighting.
I think, yeah, I'm not planning on making this easy for anyone. I'm going to stand up and be the burr under their saddle just a little bit, as it were. And I know there's a couple other things that you and I agree on too. And that was when I was running for governor, I got asked the question all the time. Well, what they want to test you all the time, right? And people want to catch you and see if they can trip you up or anything. So I'd have people come and say, "What do you think about gay marriage?" And I'm like, well, I think that's a stupid question, first of all. And I'm insulted that you would ask me that stupid of a question, because you don't even know the question to ask. The question is why is government in marriage?
Boom.
There's the question right there. And that comes down to everything that we have with usurpation with our government. It has overstepped its boundaries. It's usurped its authorities in so many ways. And until we get a grasp on, instead of being fed, I had the gal that was on before, she was, talking about coercive manipulation and such. Until we start getting educated on the real questions and the real issues, not what they're telling us to think, not who they're telling us is a good person or a bad person, this cult of personality nonsense, but actually get truly educated on the issues, such as, what you're doing here, and the education programs and such you have, is we're going to be lost for a very long time.
The fun thing about being like-minded, being individuals that pursue liberty and pursue truth, is it's fun and we're consistent. That's what's so fun, is when you bring up gay marriage, and this is always one of those things that the left tries to use to catch you. Oh, we're going to get them right there.
We're going to get you. And they do that too. And they stick their chin out every time they ask you that. There's like this sense. It's like they put their chin out. Oh,
what are they going to say?
What do you think about gay marriage? It's like, that's a stupid question. It
is, but that's the thing. It's the free market. Like, all right, if there is a desire from the culture to engage in gay marriage, then the free market emerges and it'll be successful on its own merit, or it'll not be successful on its own merit. When we return this back to the church sphere, which is where it's supposed to be, there's 4 spheres of government, right? There's self-governance, there's family governance, there's church governance, and then there's civil governance. And marriage has always been a church government issue. And so if there's a need or a desire for this, then there's going to be a church down the street that's going to say, hey, we marry same-sex couples. And if the people say, I like that, or I dislike that, that church is going to succeed or fail. That's how easy it is. And really, when we look at morality, we shouldn't be looking to government to pursue morality. No, we should be looking at the self. We should be looking at family. We should be looking at church. And there's the saying, I believe it was Breitbart who said it, is that culture is upstream of politics, right? That culture, ultimately, an astute politician will look at what's going on culturally and will kind of engineer themselves to fit what's going on culturally. Well, if that's true, then the church has to be upstream of both of those. And then we can have the desired effect of returning back to God's laws and God's truth.
Well said. So where's the link, or where should I go to look for the link for the education stuff that you have for kids?
I don't actually have something there for kids, other than I do have the affiliate with the Tuttle twins.
The Tuttle twins. That was it. That's what I was remembering.
Okay.
The Tuttle twins stuff. Let me bring that up a minute, because I thought that was pretty nice.
Yeah, the Tuttle Twins has done some wonderful things, not only in books, but they also have cartoons as well. This is something it's fun to watch with kids. Look, I'm a 46-year-old man, but I still like cartoons. I do, and it's fun to on Saturday mornings get up with the kids and watch a great cartoon, something that I don't have to be concerned about. Tuttle Twins offers that, and they go through some really interesting subject matter that perhaps kids, aren't necessarily at that stage in life where they could understand it, but they break down things like the creature from Jekyll Island. They're talking about the Federal Reserve. They're talking about the law, which if your audience has not read The Law, it is probably one of the best books you could possibly pick up. It's very short, written by Frederick Bastiat, and they have a cartoon on it. They have a book on it. This is something that I recommend for everyone. It's not too late to have these discussions with kids, because kids are sponges and they soak it up, and they just intrinsically know when they're being presented with the truth.
Well, and I think this is kind of a cool thing for even for parents and adults. I'm going to tell you what, if you're not willing to dive into this and be some sort of an autistic anon and get in there and get to the very last sentence on everything where the periods are in the sentences and such, and really dissect it, I find that there's some great value in reading children's books. What really surprised me, because I homeschooled my kids, what really surprised me is how much going back and reading them as an adult, the simplified version of what we're sometimes have in front of us is it's clarifying. And all of a sudden you go, oh man, I guess I never picked that up along the way. And going back as a refresher with something that, really, really gets to the core of it by a talented writer is very, very helpful. And I think, a refresher course for all of us is probably good, or it might be new because our indoctrination system sucks.
It does, and I believe that the hallmark of true intelligence is taking complex ideas and breaking it down to where the common man can understand it, and that's something the Tuttle Twins offers. But it's something we do on Church and State all the time. I brought up apologetics before. When people think about apologetics, defending the Christian faith, you got to be a true intellectual to do something like that. Not necessarily. Why did Jesus speak in parables all the time? Because he was taking those complex ideas and breaking it down for the common man to understand. That's how simple our faith is. And so when you look at it, I'll give you an example in apologetics. And this comes from Frank Turek, who's a friend of mine. But no one dies for a lie that they know is a lie, right? And so when you examine the lives of all of the disciples of Jesus Christ, every single one of them, excluding John, was killed horrifically. They were martyred. And even John was boiled in oil, and it was a miracle that he survived it. But every single one of these, my favorite of the disciples is Simon the Zealot. Now, we don't know a lot about Simon the Zealot, but we do know a lot about the Zealot movement. And as a Christian patriot, somebody who loves America, if I would have been alive during that time and I would have been in Israel, I probably would have been a zealot. Yeah, kick the Romans out. All right, that speaks to me. And so Simon the Zealot, as he went out into the world, started preaching the gospel, ultimately he was taken and he was sawn in half. And he was hung upside down. They started at his groin and they sawed him in half. That is one of the most horrific deaths that you could possibly imagine. And you know what? Simon the Zealot never recanted what Jesus Christ said. So if he knew that he had made this up, if he knew that this was a lie, that they were, a bunch of men had gotten together to promote this idea that Jesus Christ had been born, that he taught here, and that he died and he'd been resurrected, and that we could follow him and we could enter into heaven, and he knew that was made up, why would he go to his death being sawn in half, knowing that that was a lie?
I'm just going to let everybody ponder that for a minute. So that was there was a book that was out there, The Resurrection Factor, that I read when I was in high school or in a college, and I think that had one of the biggest impacts on me. And it was the same thought process: is that why would somebody die for a lie? They wouldn't, They wouldn't. They would stop. I mean, and think about the barbaric nature of these deaths that happened back then. And what we have now with the gangs and the drug cartels that are in every state in our nation. If you don't think that this stuff is real and could really bloom up into something horrific, it's that fallen nature of human beings that enable certain people to do really, really bad things. And I think that a lot of times we are going to be put to the test.
I think so. I think actually Jesus Christ himself said that. I mean, there's a lot of people that are saying that we're living in the end of days. Now, we don't know. We're not sure. We can look, we can examine, and we can say, you know, there's a lot of boxes that are starting to get checked. Yeah, there's groups out there like the World Economic Forum that are promoting this idea of a one world government. We see the rise of the BRICS nations, which I think last count, it's about 160 nations that have signed on to this idea, which is one of their hallmarks is the central bank digital currency backed by gold. That's a one world currency. So yeah, there are a lot of things that are starting to happen that we can say, hey, this could be the time. And if this is the time, then ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, be ready. Not only be ready, but have your faith so secure that there is nothing they can do to you, nothing they can do to you or your family or your country that would ever make you question the truth of the word of Jesus Christ. That's the position that we need to find ourselves in, because look, people like you and I, Donna, we like to push back. There's something about us that is kind of rebellious, right? It's in our core. If somebody tells us what to do, we're like, no, I'm not going to do that. But that's not going to get you through this. You gotta have that faith in Jesus Christ. You gotta know without a shadow of doubt that no matter what happens here on earth, I'm headed to a better place. That's what was going to get you through the situation that we might soon find ourselves in.
He carries us, it's not anything that we even do. I mean, it's God that carries us through these situations and gives us strength and discernment and wisdom and the ability to continue on when it looks like it's humanly impossible to do so, which is a wonderful thing. No matter what, he never will leave us or forsake us. So tell us some more stories tell us some more stories. I love your stories.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've had a lot of fun in my life, and primarily because I just kind of have that nature about me of no, like I'm not going to accept the status quo. I moved around a lot as a kid. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was actually born into a Christian cult. We were actually,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were actually visited by representatives of Jim Jones. And so I tell people oftentimes that I came this close to drinking the Kool-Aid, and I've been rejecting it ever since. But my life, I always wanted to do something. I always wanted to serve. And so I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school and served for 4 years, honorably discharged. And then I became an EMT, and I worked for about 7.5 years in that field. I didn't go to combat during my time in the Marine Corps. I saw a lot of terrible things as an EMT. And, all of this actually honestly strengthened my faith because I've seen a lot of people die, unfortunately. And I've seen people who are Christians that are on their deathbed, and I've seen people who are unbelievers on their deathbed. And what a dramatic, it's so dramatic when you see that piece from not only the individual who's dying, but also from the family when they know, hey, we're going to see this person again. We're going to see them in heaven. They led a good life. They followed Jesus, versus those who are secular, who believe that, we just end. There's a lot of panic. There's a lot of panic in their eyes and in their actions when we're ultimately facing death. And so that really had a dramatic effect. And then from there, going into politics, working for the John Birch Society, working for Turning Point, as well as understanding the threat. I've traveled across the country, and I've met really interesting people. And I know your past guest has said, there's a multitude of us, people that think just like you and I. And so I would say, don't give up hope. Don't think that you're your own island and you just can't do anything about the current situation that we find ourselves in. Look, I live in Washington State. Washington State is the one state during this election that trended further blue. I don't know if you saw this. It's the only state in the entire union that went further blue. That's crazy. I live behind enemy lines. And you know what? It's exciting. I like it. It's fun. Like I finish my show, every single show. I say, I'm Caleb Collier. I was born for a storm. And you know what?
Like that.
I was. Well, it's a quote from Andrew Jackson, who don't believe these revisionist historians. Andrew Jackson was a phenomenal president. I think I'd be bored. I think I'd be bored. I'm not made for a time of peace. I'm made to go and engage in combat against the enemies of truth and liberty. That's who I am as a person. So I couldn't be in a better state than Washington State. Now, here's the thing. I want to enact change. And I don't get sidetracked by the sexiness of the federal elections. Look, I'm happy Donald Trump got elected. Yes. But it's at that local level. That's where we need to engage. This state is probably lost, and as far as Washington State goes. But can we have an effect in my county, in the city that I live in? Absolutely, I can. That's where you can enact change. That's where one lone individual can make a massive difference. So I would encourage the audience to get involved at that local level, because that's the only way we're going to see real positive change.
What would you're an ex-politician at this moment in time. What would be something that people could do? Give them a homework assignment here in contacting their representatives or their elected officials and such, public functionaries. What would you suggest that they do right now?
This is a fun question. I love this question. So number one, I want every single person listening to this show to go out and buy a book called Confrontational Politics, written by Senator H.L. Richardson. He's actually the founder of Gun Owners of America, which in my opinion is heads and tails better than the NRA. This book is basically the solution, the answer to Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. So if you want a conservative Christian perspective on how to make those changes, this is the book for you to read. I read this book and it is highlighted and dog-eared. It is absolutely phenomenal. It was a game changer for me. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people seem to believe that politicians are kind of unapproachable. And politicians haven't really helped the situation. You write them, you call them, you get a form letter back, hey, thank you for contacting Representative so-and-so. They appreciate what you said. Yeah, it's garbage. You crumple it up, you throw it away. Pursue that individual. Relationships is how you're going to be effective in this. So get to know your city councilman, get to know your state representative, take them out to coffee. Hey, I appreciate that you are willing to serve in this capacity. And I want to just talk with you. Now, don't be super confrontational, even if they are a liberal. Like, try to figure out what you might have in common. The Bible challenges us to engage in truth in love. So let's be loving as we hit them with the truth. Once you establish a relationship with somebody, you're going to find that you can actually speak into their ear, actually maybe push them towards the truth or to pushing liberty agendas. You also want to get involved in your local party. Where I'm at, we have precinct committee officers. They're sometimes called different names in different states. But PCOs have a lot of power, and they can actually transform the party. Now, unfortunately, we live in a two-party system. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I am an independent. I vote Libertarian sometimes. I vote Constitution Party sometimes. But I engaged within the Republican Party. Now, the Republican Party, unfortunately, has kind of been the designated defeat mechanism as of late. And they have this big tent policy, this idea. This is one of the issues that I have with Reagan. When you have a big tent policy, oftentimes it actually leads to compromise, and you see the party drifting further and further towards the middle. Well, we want to hold true to those essential truths. If you can get enough people and engage enough people to become precinct committee officers for the Republican Party at the local level, you can radically transform the party, and you can actually see them pushing politicians that are on your side of things. And then you want to support those politicians. And if they fail you, you burn them to the ground. I know that sounds strong, but and I'm not saying engage in violence. I'm saying politically, you remove them. You don't allow the Mitt Romneys to exist. You're a Republican? Bull crap. Get out of here. Join the Democrat Party. You have more in common with them. No, you push the politicians who believe in the Constitution, who know it. I mean, one of the things that I love to ask every single politician, I highly recommend everyone do this, is just ask them, what's the purpose of government? And you're going to hear a whole slew of different answers. But it's a really simple question. It's found in our Declaration. The purpose of government is to secure rights. That's it. End of story. I don't want to hear anything else. So secure our rights and stop dilly-dallying in this authoritarian regime that all of you seem to be so attracted to.
Yeah, the money laundering and all that other self-enrichment stuff, they've gotten so far away from anything that looks like honor and integrity that I don't know about what you're seeing, but I'm truly seeing a lot of people who are they're just done with it because they've lost the trust of the American people. The only one that has really floated to the top is President Trump. And President Trump he has done so much for this nation in restoring truth or restoring the trust that has been so broken down because he speaks our language. He spoke and he speaks our language, and he's, in my opinion, the greatest president the United States has ever had because he came in under a fully tyrannical system that's fully developed and was able to stand up to it and really bring the people together behind him for honor and for integrity and for things that are wrong and righting those and going back to what the founding fathers had intended. And I think that I can speak for so many people that I am so grateful for what he's done and those people that have stood with him for this nation. It's amazing because, Hillary would have had us on the fast track to World War III, most of us probably dead by that time. And that you would have seen real persecution on our shores. And I'm not so sure that we're going to escape at this time with bombing Putin in Russia. Bombing Putin. It was the United States that did this. It was not Ukraine. It was the United States. It was an act of war. And honestly, if we get bombed over here with the idiots in control of our government, we deserve it. We would have deserved it for the aggression that we committed against Russia.
A lot of Christians believe that we are right up to the edge of Ezekiel 38. And Ezekiel 38 describes Russia, along with a number of other countries, Iran, probably Turkey, Ethiopia, that engage in war against Israel. And nowhere in this, and by the way, nowhere in the Bible is America found. That's kind of scary, that there's no mention of what is right now the greatest nation on earth, the most powerful nation on earth. So we're going to be removed in some way, somehow. I don't know exactly how that looks. Could there be a nuclear strike from Russia over what you just said? Ukraine is a proxy nation. It's a very corrupt nation. We're engaging in money laundering and trafficking of human beings through Ukraine. But this could be the catalyst to the United States at least lessening it as far as power in the world stage, or it could be economic. I brought up the BRICS nations. There's about 195 countries, I believe, in the world. If 160 of them have bought into this BRICS, whoa, that's a little frightening. If the dollar is removed as the world's currency, we're done right there.
It could be a cyber attack. It could be a power grid attack. We've been talking about this a lot here, that not only did they leak our election software and all the programming to every nation state hacker, level hacker on the planet, but they also leaked our nuclear codes. They're in possession of all of it. The only reason why we're still here is the threat of mutual destruction. That's it.
You're absolutely right. And you brought up the power grid. That's a great point. Most Americans don't realize there's 3 power grid systems in the United States. There's the East, the West, and then Texas has its own. Right. Which, go figure, it's Texas,
Yeah, of course.
but they haven't been hardened at all. They are so vulnerable. And the terrorists, I brought up that I used to work for Understanding the Threat, which specifically dealt with the Islamic threat in the United States. The terrorists know. They know, and they have plans to attack our grid system. And if you look at it, the vast majority of Americans, we're not ready for that. If the grid goes down, oh my gosh, there would be rioting in the street. And this is why one of the things that I push heavily on my show is to be prepared. If you look at a lot of the affiliate programs that I have on the show, it's all designed to prepare you. You should have storable food. You should have a way to purify water. You should have a generator. You should have wood heat. That's one of the big ones. If you don't have a fireplace that can burn wood, you should probably get one as soon as you possibly can so that you're ready for whatever comes our way, because if the grid goes down, I read a statistic which is actually quite horrifying. It said within 96 hours of no food, it was like 75% of the public will resort to cannibalism. That's scary.
That is pretty scary. That is horrifying. I haven't heard that one. Wow. Yeah, well, and what I know about the power grid, I do a lot of different analysis, is that we've got 12 critical substations or stations. If they hit 9 of them, we're in the dark, and we cannot recover from a dark start or a black start. We can't do it. And it's going to be a minimal of 18 months before we see anything. And then you got to look for, where did the parts come to fix this thing? Well, that would be overseas. Okay. Some of it's
all coming from China.
It's coming from China. It was coming from Germany, but it's all overseas. And I think that there's enough people opportunistic that are going to take advantage of our weakness at that moment in time, unless somebody really smart has actually prepared for this and seen ahead. And I haven't seen a lot of evidence of intelligent life up there in Washington, D.C. I mean, it's like kind of devoid of that. So not really good at the planning part, but I think the military is pretty good at planning. And I do have great faith in that we've got some very good people that are working there, but you can't put all your eggs in that basket. You know, I know I have a lot of friends that like, well, we're just going to sit and trust the Lord. I'm like, are you out of your mind? I mean, yeah, you can trust the Lord, but he also gives you hands and feet and a mouth and to do the work. I mean, we're not supposed to just sit here and do nothing. I mean, at the least of things, we should be looking at the people around us. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to plan for 2 weeks of a shutdown, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? I'm going to ignore the fact that you probably have 20 to 40 people around you that are going to come looking for help because they didn't hear the broadcast such as I do and that Caleb does. They're going to be like children that are going to need someone to help them through this because they've got no clue. This is going to broadside so many people. It's not even funny. And I believe that it's highly likely we're going to see that.
I completely agree with you. And one of the books that I also recommend is called Strategic Relocation. Joel Skousen. Most people are probably familiar with his uncle who wrote the 5,000-Year Leap. But this is where you can actually examine your state and find the safest locations. In a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, get out of the cities. And especially if there is some type of event, don't go near the city. You need to get out into the rural zones. You need to be self-sufficient. You need to be able to grow your own food, collect your own water. Those are the type of things that are going to keep you safe in this. And then, have a little extra to take care of your friends, your neighbors, family that might come out of the woodwork as they're like, hey, that crazy Caleb that was always talking about this. It was always like every Christmas, every birthday, all he wanted was prepping items. Maybe I should go to his house. Yeah, you got to be prepared for something like that. And I also, you were talking about the different ways, or we were talking about the different ways that America could potentially fall. I would also say this, don't be too eager. I know we had a major victory with the election of Donald Trump as president, but there is within the conservative movement this mentality of we're going to laugh, we're going to poke the left on this. I don't want to ever see the United States engage in another civil war because it'd be far more deadly than what we experienced during the first Civil War. And actually, I would actually argue that we're more divided now than we were during the time of the Civil War. And what I mean by that is both sides were Christian at that time. We don't see that anymore. The opposition to the United States that lives in the United States, they're not Christian. They are secular leftists. They're enamored with Marxism and socialism. That's the enemy right now. But I don't want to fight them. I want to educate them. I want to change them. I want to win hearts and minds. And if we allow ourselves to be pushed, and because it's not going to be us, it's going to be the global elitists that are pushing this agenda. Yeah, the right will probably win that civil war. Most of them, the vets, first responders, people who enjoy firearms. Yeah, they're on the right side of things. But here's the thing. You have a civil war like that, it opens up the door for the United Nations to say there's genocide occurring in the United States and we're going to send in the blue helmets. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that type of escalation. I want America to be successful because we return back to the principles in the Constitution and the free market capitalism.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with you on that. We don't want war. We want to, have peace and be able to live with our neighbors. And that's well said. Well, I usually end my broadcast with a prayer. Would you like to pray for us today?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Lord, I just come with Donna and we just pray a blessing on the people that are listening to this broadcast. I pray, Lord, that you would move within the hearts and minds of Americans who love you first, Lord, but also love a liberty that you have established. I just pray that we would be successful, that we would find like-minded individuals, that we would pursue the good and proper churches that are not bending a knee to the government, and that we would be able to push back and win victories, namely for you, Lord, to bring souls to a saving grace, Son, Jesus Christ, but also, Lord, that this country could continue its blessing that was established through a covenant with you, Lord. I just pray these things in your holy name. Amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much. Appreciate that very much. Well, do you have any last words for everyone?
I would just encourage the audience to go check out churchandstate.media. We continue our daily broadcasts. We continue to bring really hard-hitting shows and some great guests. We've had Eric Trump, General Flynn. I just interviewed actually Ron Paul, which was a phenomenal interview. So go check those out and check out the affiliates as well. We've got a lot of good stuff out there that'll help you in getting prepared for whatever comes our way.
That's wonderful. So, yeah, I really always like to hear what you have to say. I very much appreciate your moderate yet unwavering way to approach things and putting people first over knee-jerk reactions. How's that? So I think it's really wonderful. So, well, boys and girls, this is part of the show where we go to ding, 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 go to brandenburgforgovernor.com because I'm the best not conceiver who's ever not conceded in the history of the United States of America. And I want to have a discussion with the rightful president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, in cowboy boots. And so just so everybody knows, we talk to everyone, we give everybody a voice here. I believe in free speech, and that's the way we really become educated, is listen to people and listen to them talk, and hear different points of view and other things we may or may not agree with, or that we haven't thought of before. And I think that that's really a healthy way to approach everything. So with that said, everybody, boys and girls, we have, tomorrow, who do I have on tomorrow? Oh, I've got Dave Gary on, and we're going to be going over the USS Liberty. And then at 10 o'clock, it's going to be Richard Gage again. And we're going to be talking about the Ben Gurion Canal, which I think are issues that are more important to us than maybe we realize, because when we get to the bottom of some of this stuff, we might find out who's really pulling the strings and who's really become a problem globally, tied into the globalists, the money system, and all that. And we really need to go down to the base of what's happening here, not stay on this little, not stay on these distraction channel, not channels, issues, but go to the base issues and get to the head of the snake, because that's what we really need to focus on to, in fact, reverse where we are. So with that said, everybody, God bless you. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. And you know what? Make it a great day. It starts here. Be mentally tough here with a strong heart for people. And of course, here, get on your knees before God and pray for the people who you love, but also pray for your enemies, because you want to deal a blow to Satan. That's the way to do it. Go to the ones that would be the greatest loss for Satan and start praying for those people, and decide that he's just not going to continue to stay there causing problems, and bring it to Papa, and he will hear your prayers. Stay on the line, please, Caleb, and I'm going to end the broadcast, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.